Allison could not do anything concerning that. And of course, the first half will end, and Liverpool will go back and, of course, go back to the drawing board, find out what exactly is happening. But you do know, as you've been saying since, according to statistics, every time Liverpool have conceded a goal,
they don't
they
win
have
the game.
not come back from it.
And that's the big worry now for Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool, because how do they say that in local parlance? Wahala don gaso, because
Exactly.
Fulham have taken the lead in that game. And how do Liverpool come back into this one? Because it is half time out there at Liverpool, the Anfield Stadium. Liverpool 0, Fulham 1. Mario Lemina is the man with the goal, and Salah has got pretty much an egg on face moment, because he was robbed of the ball and the ball was put into the back of the net on that occasion. Exciting 45 minutes of football we have seen, and unfortunately we have to wrap up the broadcast very, very soon, because like I told you, GlasCon 2021 is set to go down. We're counting down in a matter of minutes to give you live from the venue as concerns that big event that will go down right here on 99.3 Nigeria Info. But we'll take your thoughts very, very quickly while we wrap up the broadcast. AC Milan still lead 1-0 in that game out there at Hellas Verona. Scott Parker delighted with that one, and Jurgen Klopp is asking the question as to how they will salvage the 3 points in this game. Adeze, Michael, wonderful 45 minutes of football we've seen. What did you make of it?
Of course, it has been a 50-50 stuff. Both sides actually had the fair share of chance. I thought Liverpool started the game better. They were lively. They were fluid in the attack. Mohamed Salah trying to find spaces in the penalty area of the Fulham side, but he was kept quiet by dogged and resilient Fulham defenders right there. But Fulham found themselves into the game, imposed themselves into the game, and took the ball and took the game to Liverpool, the champions, and they began to try their luck at goal, ask questions of the defense of this Liverpool side, and Mohamed Salah, the sacrificial lamb, outmuscled, and the ball was stolen by Lemmy. I have to give credit to the goal scorer who saw the need to steal the ball off Salah, who knew how he could get the ball away from him, because Salah was looking like he didn't know what to do with the ball. He didn't know how to clear it out, and the young man pounced on it and stole the ball, and of course smashed it ballistically past Alisson.
I like that, ballistically.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Is that a slang? Or
I've sent you to go to school after that. Ballistically.
All right.
Ballistically.
Okay, 0700 993 993 993. Wrapping up the broadcast, because GlasCon 2021 is set to go down. We'll take as many calls as we can before we exit the studio. Hi there, good afternoon to you. Good afternoon.
How are you? Coach?
Very well, thank you. What's your name?
This is Frank from Ojo Alaba.
Welcome, Frank.
Yeah, I don't want to marry today.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah, so you see, this Premier League matter, it's not something everybody will be kicking their head. The only position I know that I've gone out
anything. Good afternoon.
So what we saw during the NSAS protest was the power that and the potential when women lead. Women were the engine room. I mean, that's like the term I like to use and sort of the term that comes to mind when I think about how they organized, how they mobilized, and how they raised funds. And not just for themselves, but to feed people, to ensure that people had access to medical treatment, to ensure that people had access to credits, right, to be able to do what they needed to do. And that's the power when women lead.
Àwọn obìnrin gangan náà kò sí nǹkan tá a lè ṣe, kò sí nǹkan tọkùnrin ṣe ń sìn tóbìnrin ò lè ṣe. Gbogbo nǹkan dáadáa náà làwa náà lè ṣe sílé ayé fi máa rọ̀.
First off, there's an underlying blindness to the value that women bring to the environment generally. If you've ever actually tried to manage a whole stereotypical position of a house, you would understand the amount of thought and meticulousness that goes into it. And so you realize that people who can expertly navigate that sort of reality by far are capable to, to administer managerial duties in a way that will like properly bring about like the results that we need.
But the NSAS campaign showed us something, that when men and women come together to think, to strategize, to act, to make joint decisions, you see that level of diversity and inclusion. And this was what really drove the NSAS campaign. It was because people came together, one vision. It just really drove that spirit of collectivism and what we really need in Nigeria to push the country forward.
I feel women are seen as powerful, but the society doesn't just want to acknowledge the power of a woman. Hence why she's being suppressed instead of encouraged. And time again, women have definitely proven themselves, outdid the status quo, and done beyond what people expected of women or even men. And we're still years and years after, we're still fighting for equal rights, representation, not just in politics, even at workplaces. Women are underpaid. I mean, and it definitely starts from not the family, it starts from you as an individual.
So wrong how we don't have enough female representation in government. Why can't we? Why can't we have women represent us in government? Why can't we have women as governors? Why can't we have a woman as our president?
It's the fact that women don't just serve themselves, but they serve everyone. And so one of the most exciting things now, I think, in Nigeria is no one is questioning if women can and should be leading.
I mean, it's a very beautiful time to be alive. When you think back to the NSAS campaign or the protest and how powerful, how bold, how audacious, women represented themselves. The impact, the infrastructure that backed the campaign, the sophistication, the mobilization, the organization, it points to one thing. What have we been thinking? I think it presents a very interesting case for anyone who has ever, had a doubt in their mind about the role, the strategic role women play in nation building.
Ṣebí ní America lọ́hùn yẹn obìnrin máa ń jẹ president tí nǹkan kò dẹ̀ ní títorí ẹ̀ ṣẹlẹ̀.
See, women are actually taking like a stand here. So from this experience, we know that women can actually do better in place of power.
Females are really doing good. You're doing a wonderful job. I'm also doing a wonderful job. I'm a photographer.
But everyone knows that women can lead. And so all those things around barriers, social cultural norms and religious sort of beliefs that have prevented and impeded women from, playing a significant role in decision making and positions of power, I think, are gone, right? Because people have seen this manifest real time. And I think that was one of the most amazing things. And so the question now is, what do we do next? And what do we do with all of that, all of that power that we saw? And I think that there are a few things.
We've got by-elections coming, we've got local government elections coming, and then we have 2023. Now is the time to act. Who are the female candidates? How can we back them? How can we support them? It's time for the citizens to really take on the role as active players in strengthening the democracy of our nation. And to do that, it means that you have to push for greater representation. And when you push for greater representation, it means that you put it upon yourself to consciously think about electing leaders that reflect the society that we have today. And that's men and women. We have balanced policies across all areas.
It will be a nice balance to have more women learning their voice, because generally, as we have seen, even from this NSARS movement, a lot of women have been really taking it more serious than the guys as well. They've been in the front making things happen, and we need that in government. So it would be nice to see more women in Nigerian politics for sure.
The truth of the matter is, everybody thinks women are not strong enough to occupy a particular position, and it's really a stereotype that we need to correct.
I honestly hope that as this is a revolution in terms of good governance, it's also a revolution in terms of like overarching mindset, and people place the value on women that they should.
I feel that there should not be gender bias in politics.
I think one interesting thing about the NSAS campaign, and I think for me, it just really made us understand that, you see, we have a lot of human-made problems in Nigeria. Cultural stereotypes, religious stereotypes. Women cannot do this, women cannot do that. But why did women lead? So the people allow them to lead? I mean, this thing's just so funny. We need to start thinking about those things. And it really makes me laugh, right? So there's selective discrimination. So does it mean that we'll let women lead when we want them to lead? So no more. You see that old, that excuse about cultural stereotypes, religious stereotypes. Yes, they're there, but they're human-made. And it's just time to put them behind us. Because the NSAS campaign had women, intelligent, bold, strong women, leading with so much passion, with so much integrity, with so much transparency. I mean, for me, I kind of feel like after this, you're going to see a lot of institutions, a lot of universities, a lot of intellectuals study the infrastructure that drove one of the biggest movements of modern time era in Nigeria, the NSAS campaign. And then you had women right at the fore of that. That is so powerful. So no more hiding behind religious and cultural stereotypes. We're done with that. We're ready for business. It's not business as usual anymore. Women deserve a place at the table. We're not even asking, we're demanding, because that's the fundamental right. Equal representation, greater representation. That is our duty of call as citizens to push for it. And so the NSAS movement was just a springboard. The passion we feel right now, everything we feel, the rush of emotions, these should translate into something so defining that would shape our future for the rest of our lives. People keep saying, let's do this for the future generation. I don't know. Let's do this for now. In my lifetime, I want to see a parliament that can attain parity, and that's 50-50. It's not so difficult to do. If people can only understand that we are doing this for the progression of the country. It's not women saying we want to come and take over, right? It's women saying we're equal players in the policy of a nation, And so we should be part of the highest level of decision making so that we can have balanced outcomes, we can have progressive policies, and we can really fulfill the dreams of our founding fathers.
So we need to ensure that we support women to get involved in politics and in governance. And there are a few roles that women can play, right? So whether this is as candidates themselves, whether this is as empowered and enlightened voters, because I think that that's completely different from just being a voter. And then whether this is going forward as empowered and enlightened citizens, right? Because if you're empowered and you're enlightened, you take specific actions. And why this is important is there's just not elective office, but there's appointive office. And these are two categories that we should be looking at ahead of 2023.
tó bá jẹ́ nàìjíríà wọ́n lè aláwọ̀ akọ́ndẹ̀ gba àwọn obìnrin láàyè kò sí nǹkan kan tó burú ń bẹ̀ tó ráwọ̀ obìnrin ni a mọ gbogbo nǹkan ṣe.
But specifically, when I start to think about the work we do at Elect Her, our focus is on ensuring that capable, competent women get elected, right? Ahead of 2023, we need to identify those women, right? And we need to begin to support them. In line with our 4E approach, we need to engage, we need to encourage, we need to equip these women. And most importantly, we need to be enabling them with the financial, the human, and the social resources in terms of network and capital that they need. So I mean, I'm just hoping that what we have seen and what we saw, is harnessed and amplified so that in 2023, we will not be talking about less than 10% of women representation in political leadership in this country. So when 2023 comes, we must not forget what happened in 2020. We must all come out to vote a woman, because you can be sure, especially if Elect Her supports her, that she's capable and she's competent. So let's not go out there and forget everything that happened. Make sure that you're voting for candidates who will indeed improve your livelihoods, give you better access to healthcare, to education, and to economic opportunities. And we need men as allies. The power is currently in the hands of men. So if we're genuine about women taking up positions of leadership, then we need you men to support these women. Mentor a woman, support her, fund her, open the door for her and show her the way. So we need men as allies.
So now let's talk about men as allies. We love our men, okay? And this is not a fight. We're saying in a highly patriarchal society, we can push for the advancement of women's political representation and leadership in isolation. This must be a collective effort. And so we need men. We need men to be bold. We need men to support the movement. The way men walked side by side with the women that led and drove the NSAS campaign. The way we aligned together, because something defining, something so spiritual happened. We should do that and carry that into 2023, all the elections before that. So I'm calling out to all men. This is not a fight for just women or about women. This is for all of us. This is for now. This is for the future. This is for a better economy, better healthcare system, better educational system, financial inclusion. Everything we want, let's just put for equal.
Hi, good afternoon, welcome. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili, and this is GlassCon 2021, the Glass Ceiling Convention. It's so great to see everybody. Everyone's here. And I'm talking about all the panelists. I'm talking about all the attendees. Everyone's already dropping messages in the message box. Special thank you to Nigeria Info FM for buying into this vision. The Glass Ceiling Convention is the child of my show, The Glass Ceiling on Nigeria Info. And the goal of the show has always been to be actionable. We all know the obstacles women face, economically, socially, domestically. And we also know that the big question often is, how do we overcome them? What specific actions can women adopt and execute to remove these obstacles? The how is what we're going to be talking about today for the next couple of hours. And that's where our keynote speaker and our panelists will come in. These are all women with tremendous, invaluable experience in politics and in mobilization of women. The goal is to leverage that experience and the know-how into a blueprint by answering the tough questions. And looking at how many of you signed up and took out time on your Sunday to be here, we're so encouraged. We're going to be refunding the data of the first 20 people who joined this meeting today. So if you were among the first 20, congratulations to you. A special thank you to all our partners who helped make GlassCon 2021 reality: the Canadian High Commission, the UK High Commission, the US Consulate General, the Open Society Initiative for West Africa, Elect Her, whose mini documentary you watched as we allowed guests to join the meeting today. You're going to be hearing from some of them as we go along. So let's get it started with opening remarks from one of our partners. The Canadian High Commission is doing amazing work when it comes to women's rights. I love that Canada says its foreign policy has a feminist agenda. So now let's hear from the High Commissioner of Canada, Nicola Simard. Nicola, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with all of you to celebrate International Women's Day one day in advance. Canada is pleased to be supporting this year's Glass Ceiling Convention in partnership with Nigeria Info 99.3 FM Lagos. And I remember fondly of my visit to Lagos recently, and I had the opportunity to meet you and to meet the team there in Lagos, and that was a great experience. As you know, it's been a challenging year in Nigeria and around the world as we all continue to struggle with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. There is hope, however, with the start of the vaccination program here in Nigeria, following the delivery of close to 4 million doses of vaccines last week through the COVAX initiative, to which Canada is a major donor since its inception. This year's International Women's Day happened to coincide with the pandemic's one-year mark. I think this is fitting for two reasons. First, the pandemic shined the spotlight on the consequences of gender inequality in Nigeria. Not only did we witness a terrible rise in gender-based violence, especially during the early months of lockdown, but we also saw an inadequacy of existing response systems and their ability to support survivors. Secondly, when we consider the broader impact of the pandemic on women, from declines in their economic well-being and empowerment to reduced access to essential health services, this crisis has underscored the need for women to have a greater say in how Nigeria recovers and moves forward. Which is why the theme of this year's convention, Challenging the System, Nigerian Women Taking Political Power, is so relevant today. There's never been a more important time for women to become more involved in politics. And there is much progress to be made here in Nigeria. Currently, women make up only 6.7% of elected positions in Nigeria. This is compared to an average of 15% across sub-Saharan Africa, and even parity in some African countries. These figures point to the need for greater support and encouragement to female candidates at all political levels. But they also can call for more focused and sustained attention on the underlying barriers that prevent or discourage women and girls from considering a career in politics. These include deeply rooted social and gender norms, as well as unequal access to educational and economic opportunities that can provide a gateway into politics. This is why Canada has adopted, as you said, a feminist foreign policy, and why we put such an emphasis on better understanding and addressing the structural barriers to gender equality. And this is reflected in all of our advocacy and programming here in Nigeria. The latter includes our support to women's political empowerment and leadership through UN Women, as well as multi-year core funding to grassroots women's rights organization through Action Aid Nigeria with the program Women's Voice and Leadership. As we look forward to a brighter 2021, Canada will continue to proudly walk alongside and amplify the voices of those working to advance gender equality in Nigeria and around the world, and to strongly encourage women's participation in politics, because this is the wisest thing to do, because it benefits everyone in any society, as demonstrated in many countries around the world and on the continent. Thank you for joining us today. I wish you all a wonderful and first ever glass ceiling convention. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Mr. Simar, and that was brilliant. The UK High Commission is also a GlassCon partner. Her Majesty's government has committed a lot of resources to improving political, social, and economic outcomes for women here in Nigeria. Speaking next to tell us more about it is the Deputy High Commissioner to Nigeria, Ben Llewellyn-Jones. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much indeed. I hope I'm audible. It looks like
yes,
I
you are.
Did.
Very
fantastic.
clearly. Yes.
Well, firstly, thank you very much for letting us participate. And it's really, really fantastic to be part of such an interesting and vibrant group of people who clearly care so passionately about these issues. And we do too. And on behalf of the British High Commission and particularly the Deputy High Commission here in Lagos, I just want to join our voice with others in saying this is an issue that matters. It's an issue in which we've been engaged for some time, and indeed an issue where our programming and our development support has been engaged for some time, trying to encourage more women to come forward and more women to be able to participate in politics and indeed to be elected. But it's an incredibly difficult thing to achieve. And I think we've seen that over the last few years, but that doesn't make it something we should stop trying to address. I'm really struck, having been in Nigeria from 2014 to 2017 and having returned, how so many of the barriers that prevent women and prevent young women particularly from entering politics still remain. And without naming names, sometimes you come across attitudes and views from senior politicians in Nigeria, which frankly are not helpful. They confirm prejudice and they make that glass ceiling incredibly difficult to break. And I think it's all of our responsibility, all of us, to try and find ways to show how the ceiling can be broken, to help people look beyond it, and indeed to help people realize and to see that their ambition should be to enter politics. And I think we did see, and I think the package at the beginning showed it, the attitude and the view of particularly young women in Nigeria, particularly around the NSAS protest time, and how they felt that their voice was not being heard, but they also had a voice, and a voice that could articulate their needs, their social needs, and indeed suggest how they could support wider social needs in Nigeria. And I was really heartened, to be honest, to see so many young people, but young women coming forward at that time and visibly, including from the Feminist Coalition, to say, this is not what we want something different. And I think it's really important that we continue to support those voices and make sure those voices can be heard and find ways for them to not just to enter politics, but to ensure that when they do, barriers are removed and they can go on to govern. I'm really struck that in the UK, we still have these challenges. We have the largest percentage of women in the House of Commons that I think that we've ever had, but it's still not 50-50. And indeed in the House of Lords, an institution that's often much maligned, still not 50-50. And we've had 2 female prime ministers, but that's 2 out of so many. So it's not as if these challenges are unique to Nigeria, but we can share from our experience and we can certainly share from our view of how to overcome these challenges and work together. And I also relate very much to the comments in the package, but I'm sure will be made by others, about the importance of men in this debate. I'm very conscious that I'm a man speaking about the glass ceiling that women face, but I really believe that breaking that glass ceiling requires men to step forward, he for she, and to speak with a clear and compelling voice, and to call out unacceptable behaviour and prevent it from reoccurring. So I'm going to finish my comments there because I'm really keen to hear the views of others. But just to say the UK is absolutely committed to this agenda. Our development programming, our support, our political engagement all sits behind it. And really, it's about what we can do to help others and voices in Nigeria to make a difference. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ben Lulling-Jones there, the Deputy High Commissioner to Nigeria for the UK. Now, Lagos, Nigeria, the world, because we have people who are watching, who are listening from all over the world. We've got people in America, we've got people in South Africa, people in Singapore, people in Malaysia, people right here in Nigeria, all over the country, Ebonyi, Uyo, Kano, Ogun, Enugu, Imo, Rivers, and right here in Lagos. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Don't forget that the first 20 people who join the meeting will get refunds for their data, because we love that you are as committed as we are to seeing more women represented in office. And what we're doing today is simply going to talk about it. Like I said, when we started earlier on, the Glass Ceiling Convention is a child of my radio show, Glass Ceiling, very popular. Wednesdays, 4 p.m. You should tune in next week. And what we try to do there is make things as actionable as possible, which is why I'm very excited to hear from our keynote speaker. A lot of the world was enthralled by the US election last year, which spilled over into 2 Senate runoffs in Georgia this January. The results of those 2 races flipped the US Senate for the first time in a decade, and Georgia's presidential result also flipped for the first time in 40 years. And a lot of that was because of mass voter registration of women and young people in the last few years. And our keynote speaker is one of the forces behind that drive. She's the CEO of the New Georgia Project. Her political action group is a force for voter registration, voter education, and getting out the vote. And now she's here to share her insights from her Georgia experience. It is my honor to welcome to the glass stage, Nse Ufot, our keynote speaker. Hi, Nse.
Hi. I'm so happy to be here today. We're gonna start. Sanu. All right. Ndeo. Leo.
Okay.
Hello. What's poppin'? I'm Nse Ufot. And I'm the CEO of the New Georgia Project. We're probably best known for being a sort of large-scale voter registration organization, voter mobilization. But the way that I like to describe NGP is that we are one, problem solvers and like solution developers, but we are like a technology startup inside a civil rights and a voting rights organization. When we launched the New Georgia Project in 2014, at the time there were about 1.2 million Black, Latino, and Asian Americans in Georgia, the state of Georgia alone, who were eligible to vote and completely unregistered. And why that number matters is because when we started looking at top of the ticket races, so United States President, Governor of the state of Georgia, United States Senate, top of the ticket is races where everyone in the state is eligible to vote. That the enduring margin for about a decade was about 250,000 votes between the successful Republican and, quite frankly, the losing Democrat. And so looking just at historical numbers and historical participation, there were 5 times the number of eligible but completely unregistered, not participating Black Georgians, young people, women in our state, 5 times than any number that was necessary to swing and win any election. And so, we then began to work I should start by saying that for us at the New Georgia Project, the goal was not necessarily just to register a whole bunch of people to vote, but being very strategic about how was it that we were going to bring about the change that we needed to see in Georgia. When we think the minimum wage for salaries in Georgia is $5.15 an hour. And I know that we all, because this is a global conference, that conversion rates, I'm not going to ask you to do math today. But what I will say is that in Georgia and in several states in the deep South, particularly Black states or states where there is a people of color majority, the minimum wage is far below the federal minimum wage. And the federal minimum wage in America itself is not enough for people to sustain themselves, to sustain a family, to build businesses, to be able to retire in old age comfortably. So when I think about the fact that in a place like Georgia or in America, that there haven't been any new nuclear power plants built anywhere in the US in over 30 years, and there are 2 that are being built in Georgia in Black communities. When I think about the maternal mortality rate, that Black women in the US and Black women in Georgia die at extraordinarily high rates during childbirth, or that in a place like Georgia, Georgia has 159 counties. And in half of those counties, in about 79 counties, there are no OBGYNs. That there are several places in Georgia where hospitals are closing because there's a requirement that, if someone comes in and they're sick, that they have to be treated. And so hospitals are going bankrupt because our leaders in Georgia are refusing to prioritize healthcare and access to healthcare, so that, again, not only can we, work and leverage our labor in order to gain profit for our employers, but so that we can live healthy and full lives. So I should say, when we started the New Georgia Project, the idea was people are dying, people don't have access to healthcare. Let's sign people up. It was the early days of the Obama administration. They had just passed a law called the Affordable Care Act, which was designed to try to give people access to healthcare. And we were talking to poor people, farmers, people of color who had never had health insurance, who had never been to a doctor, and trying to talk to people about, how to sign up for health insurance. It just got very, very complicated, and we were not achieving the aims that we sought out to. So we switched, because part of it is, despite the fact that, there was this federal law that had been passed by the Obama administration, that the leaders in our state, in our Georgia, were completely unaccountable to the people, that they had gotten there by suppressing the votes, by shrinking the electorate. And so if you got into office without having to forcefully and strongly make the case to the people, why would you ever be accountable to the people? And that is what we saw from our local leaders, and that is what we set out to change. I think before we launched, there's never been a woman governor in Georgia, that despite the fact that Georgia is going to be the first place in the deep South in the US with a white minority. So by 2024, 2025, so in less than 5 years, white Georgians, white Americans are going to be the minority in Georgia. And while there are some people that are terrified about that future and what it means for the future of public policy in the South, in Georgia, and in the US, there are other folks that are actively organizing right now in this moment to build a better Georgia, to build our future. And I want to be clear that gender and class do not determine one's ability to lead. I think often about the 2018 governor's election here in Georgia, where my friend and the founder of the New Georgia Project, Stacey Abrams, ran for governor. And she ran for governor and by far mobilized the greatest number of young people, Black people, people of color, and women in the history of Georgia. And because of widespread, rampant voter suppression, Georgia's long and recent history of voter suppression, remember that I said in less than 5 years, white people are going to be the minority in Georgia, and that there will be a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multilingual, progressive majority, and that there are some people who are deathly afraid of that, so much so that they are willing to break the machinery of our democracy to prevent that from ever happening. And so when you see the work that the New Georgia Project did to flip the state of Georgia, to deliver the state of Georgia for Vice President Kamala Harris and President Biden, when you see 9 weeks later that Black Georgians, women, and young Georgians came back again over the high holidays in the US, right? Over Thanksgiving, over Christmas, over Kwanzaa, over Hanukkah, to come back out again and vote to deliver Georgia's first Black United States Senator and Georgia's first Jewish United States Senator, who's also a millennial. This happened not because people love voting, although, you know, yeah, it's not because like people are like, oh, I'm sitting in my house with my family trying to survive, but I'm such a democracy champion that I want to show up to vote. No. I wish that that were the case. It would absolutely and certainly make my job a lot easier. But the reason that people showed up, and they showed up in extraordinary numbers, is because we have been doing the work of connecting the act of voting, the act of participating in our democracy, to the change that people want to see. That the only way that you're actually going to move people to action, to move people to participating, is by talking about your shared vision for the world, speaking to people through values, right? What is it that we care about? That we live in a great nation with an extraordinary amount of resources, and there's still an extreme amount of poverty, that there's still a racial wealth gap, that race and gender and class are still the lenses by which we look at America's biggest public policy failures, our biggest governmental failures. But because we know that race and gender and class impact so much how people's daily lives, we also use those lenses to develop our solutions. And so, you know, again, 1.2 million young people, people of color, unmarried women who were eligible at the time when we started. And now to this day, we have registered over 500,000 people to vote. And have developed a framework, developed a strategy to get to 1 million by the end of this decade. So by 2024, 2025, when the tipping point reaches and Georgia will be majority people of color. But also focusing on, again, how do we talk about our values? How do we talk about the Georgia that we want to build, the America that we want to build for ourselves, for our families, and for our communities? And so, as I start to wind up, I'll tell you that we focus a lot on narrative, and narrative not just as storytelling, but narrative as an organizing tool, right? How we turn our values into action, right? That we value integrity, we value honesty, we value fairness, that in a country with extraordinary amounts of resources, there should never be a child that goes to bed hungry, that in a country where we have some of the world's greatest scientists and the greatest scholars, right? I brag often about Nigeria and how we discovered DNA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that gender and class should not prevent any of Nigeria's children, should not prevent any of America's children from having access to quality education, from having access to quality, affordable healthcare. Right? So those are our values, and we want to turn that into action. We want to turn that into campaigns. And so thinking about the process by which we bring in individuals and we bring in communities and we bring in nations into our world, how these people identify themselves. Who are you? What do you stand for? How we formulate our choices and how we move. And so when I think about that, I think about, there's a professor from Harvard University who studies social movements. His name is Marshall Gans, and he talks about the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now. Right? So when I think about the story of self, and I demonstrated that a little bit, like, why were you called to act? Why are you motivated to get others to join you in this action? What stories can you share about your life, your journey that allows other people to get you, to see you, to hear you, to understand sort of who you are in this moment, right? And the second is the story of us. Right. So when you're trying to bring people into your movement, you're trying to bring people into your campaign, right? That to see your vision. What are our shared values? What are our shared experiences? What are our shared aspirations for our community, for our country? And which one of these shared experiences or shared values are you going to appeal to when you are calling others to join your movement, to join your campaign? And then there's the story of now. So what are the urgent challenges that you hope to inspire others to take action on, right? So like, obviously we often have a grand plan, a big vision for our country, for our communities. But what is the issue right now? What is the pain right now? What is the opportunity right now that people can join you in so that we can, get to that our highest aspirations for ourselves and our country? What choices are you asking others to make if we are to meet this challenge successfully? And how can we act together to achieve this outcome? And how can you begin now at this moment? I am often like beating myself up, not beating myself up, but I spend a lot of time in my own head, right? Thinking about plans and scenario A, B, C through Z. And let me be clear, that is a useful exercise. I think about the 2016 elections, where the election of Donald Trump sort of shocked the world and shocked our country, and shocked a lot of activists and organizers into action to protect ourselves, to protect our families, and to protect our communities and our country and the rule of law, right? But it is absolutely important that you think about, again, the story that you want to tell when you are bringing people in, the story of yourself, the story of us, and the story of now. And stories not only teach us how to act, but they inspire people to act, right? They communicate our values through the language of the heart and the language of our emotions. And the idea is that you can move people intellectually. People can know what the right thing is to do. There's no doubt in my mind that everyone in Nigeria and everyone in the US knows that there's nothing about our gender that prevents women from being leaders. But the fact that we have not had a woman head of state is less about what we know intellectually and more about the culture and how we need to shift culture and how we need to change hearts and minds, right? That those two go together, and that is how we bring about change, by telling our personal stories of not only the challenges that we faced and the choices that we've made and what we've learned from those outcomes. We can inspire others and we can share our own wisdom. That it allows us to communicate our values, not as like abstract principles, but as our lived experience. And they have the power to move people to action, right? So when we think about the work that I do at the New Georgia Project, right, it's because, again, half of Georgia's counties don't have OBGYNs. And it's not because the money isn't there. The federal government, the United States federal government, has offered the state of Georgia billions of dollars to expand its Medicaid program, to provide health care to Georgians. But because of Republicans and our conservative leaders' values, one, they continue to turn the money down because they want insurance companies to continue to make money, because they don't want to deliver a victory to the Democrats and to Obama. They've called it Obamacare. And so by denying Georgians Obamacare, they are willing to let us die for politics. Right. And so that is why we register people to vote. That is why we build video games that are designed to demystify campaigns and elections and how they work. That is why we build mobile apps that are designed to help us measure wait times and how long people are waiting in line to vote. That is why we sue the government on a regular basis when they are in violation of civil rights laws and voting rights laws. And that is why we put our feet in the streets when they are not listening to us, right? When they are ignoring the demands of the people, that we are fighting on all fronts. It's in the courts. It's in the court of public opinion. You can check out our Instagram. You can check out our Twitter page. You can check out our Facebook pages. Like, there is no platform that we are not using to organize, to tell the story of ourselves and to tell the story of this moment that we are in right now. And so I'm super happy to be in community with you all, to have these conversations with you all, because there's one thing that I absolutely know is that we are the ones that we have been waiting for, that there's no Calvary coming to save us, that we are the ones that are going to save Nigeria. We are the ones that are going to save our country, that like there's no book. There's no blueprint, that we are creating it. We are writing it right now. And we owe it to ourselves to act on it. I know you know it. I know you know it in your heart. And so despite the fact that there's not been a woman president before, there's few women governors, that there's no example for you to follow, you know what our people need. And now is the time to act on it. So thank you.
And said, thank you so much. My goodness, I wish we were in a hall because the applause would have been thunderous. And said, that was glorious. We are the ones we've been waiting for. I'm hoping somebody tweeted that. Somebody better tweet that. And you better use the hashtag GlassCon2021 and you tag and say Ufot on Twitter. Oh my God. I need to collect myself and then focus. Woo! All right. So while Nse was talking, it kept sounding like I was listening to Nigeria, right? Or listening to somebody talk about the Nigerian situation, because she's talking about maternal mortality. She's talking about poor quality healthcare. She's talking about poor education. And all of these things are things that we talk about all the time. When you were watching that mini documentary put together by Elect Her, a lot of the things that they were talking about as well was healthcare, education, things that could be different if we had women managing it. Now, there were lots of questions dropping for you in the chat, Nse, while you were talking, also dropping for you on WhatsApp, on social media. But I am going to be selfish. I'm going to be selfish, and I'm going to ask a couple of my own questions first. Now, of course, if you want to ask Nse questions, use the Q&A button on your Zoom. Use the Q&A button. Tell us your name, tell us your gender, tell us where you are messaging her from, and then go straight to your question, and then we're going to take it. We're taking questions only for now. We're not taking notifications just yet. And then, of course, if we've got questions from our panelists, I would love to hear what our panelists think. Just raise your hand if you want to say something. We're going to come to you, and then you go on and say what you do want to say. If you actually want to speak, instead of just writing us a question as an attendee, raise your hand as well. We'll click on you and allow you to speak at the event. But you have to keep your question short and go straight to the point, or we're just going to mute your mic. And so we're seeing the Georgia legislature changing some of the election laws right now. And some people are saying that this might make voter suppression easier again. So this is essentially an arms race, right? This is essentially an arms race or a cat and mouse game. Right. How do you keep re-strategizing to stay ahead of the hurdles that are being put up?
So in our community, we have a saying that if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Oh, I like that.
And so the thing is, we knew that they would be upset, right? That one of the things is we're planning sort of as a minority group, right? As people who were previously not empowered. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes we have a clear strategy for how we win, right? So this is what we need to do in order to win. Mm-hmm. But rarely do we have a strategy about how we will govern. So what happens once we get into that position of power, right? Mm-hmm. And what is our plan once we win? And so as a part of our dreaming about what it takes to win, we're also dreaming about what we will need to do to enact our agenda once we are in power. And one of those things is defending against sexist, racist, white supremacist backlash, right? That exists in fascist, that we knew that Donald Trump wasn't gonna go away. We knew that the people who supported him were not going to go away, that there was still, we would have to contend with that. You know, while we were celebrating on January 5th, the election of Reverend Warnock and the election of John Ossoff, Georgia's first Black and Georgia's first Jewish United States Senate, we had 90 minutes to celebrate before people were breaking into the United States Capitol and trying to stop the electoral vote, right? That there were Capitol police officers who died because white supremacists refused to believe that Donald Trump lost the election, right? And so the idea is in your plans to win, think about what happens and how you get to enact your agenda once you win. And that includes defending your position, defending your agenda, defending your people.
Okay. Well, we've got lots of people who have their hands raised. Do we have any panelists who have their hands raised today? Any panelists? No? Okay, so let's go to the attendees first. So who's our first speaker? Who's the first person with a question? Just tell us your name, tell us where you are watching from or listening from, and then go right on with your question. Who do we have? Who do we have? I can't see because it's far away. Who do we have? Just say the name of the person today. Who? Lucy. All right, so let's let Lucy talk. Hi, Lucy. Lucy, can you hear us? Oh, Lucy's not there. So let's go to the next person very quickly. What's the name of this person? Emmanuel? All right, let's hear from Emmanuel. Emmanuel, can you hear us? Can he hear us? Can he speak? I think we're going to just stick with Q&A since that doesn't seem to be working great. So let's go back to the Q&A questions then.
Hello, Sandra.
Oh, Emmanuel, you're there. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Nice job.
Thank you. Just go straight to the point.
I think.
Listening to Yusuf comments, I think maybe, I don't know how we will bring such to Nigeria, start such project in Nigeria. Of course, you are doing a lot to make sure that to start that kind of a thing, maybe, but I hope maybe another.
Do you have a question, Emmanuel? Do you have a question, Emmanuel?
No question for now.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Let's go Q&A. Let's see the questions that we do have. I think we had a question from Alegbe. Alegbe says, how does the NGP hope to deal with the new legislations in states like Georgia? I think we just addressed that question. That was the same question that I asked Nse just now. Do we have more questions, Tunde? Do we have, no, well, the audio isn't working great. So I think we're just going to stick with Q&A. Do we have more questions?
There's someone, Temi Lana, in the chat who says, I'm sorry, but your narrative about white supremacists, Trump, etc., sounds very biased and one-sided, like the current media information that we're battling. I, for one, am more concerned about policies, ideology, and character than about partisan views. One, white supremacy isn't a partisan view. Two, there's a saying that you cannot fix what you have not faced. And so when we talk about the challenges that face America in this moment, I will endeavor to never lie to the people and will use very clear language to describe the problem that we're dealing with. America is in the middle of a demographic shift where soon white people will not be the majority, that we will have a multiracial, multi-ethnic plurality. And so thinking about governing in this moment and moving beyond the assumption that white automatically makes one prepared to be leaders and that men or being male automatically makes one suitable to be a leader and that wealth automatically prepares one to be a leader is something that we absolutely have to challenge. I have no interest in tiptoeing around people and their feelings about this moment that we have a vision for a liberated Georgia and a liberated America where your race and your gender and your class are not barriers to success. And if we can't even speak honestly about what the ills are, what the challenges are, then we have no chance of actually fighting them and defeating it. And I will say this, and Georgia's a prime example. 71% of white Georgians voted for Donald Trump, and he still lost in our state because it was 29% of white people, the majority of Black folks, majority of Latinos, majority of Asian Americans, that people banded together. That is how we are going to move forward, the end, right? So in the US, it is race and ethnicity. In other places, it's ethnicity and tribal affiliation and religion, but we move forward together.
I love that. So the great thing about this conversation with Nse is that she's agreed very graciously to stay here on the meeting with us until we end in the next couple of hours. So that gives us time to move on to our next speaker just before the panel conversation. Here's why. A lot of the questions we're getting so far are questions that only the members of our panel are equipped to answer because they They are politicians here. They've been in political office here. They work with the policymakers here. I'm thinking about Cynthia Mbamalu, for instance, who works very closely with INEC, monitoring elections, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of the questions we've been getting are questions that they are more suited to respond to. And so we're going to leave that to them when the panel conversation starts in 10 minutes. For now, we want to take a look at what success will look like by the time GlassCon 2021 is over. When we say GlassCon 2021 is about a plan for women to take political power, how are we defining political power? Because Instead just said something very, very striking about narratives, about storytelling, about how that is very, very important. She gave us very solid examples with what people in America were doing with Obamacare, even though Obamacare could have provided healthcare for a lot of people who couldn't afford it. So there's a lot of power that comes with storytelling. There's a lot of power that comes with being able to tell the right story, being able to sell the right narrative. For our purposes, for GlassCon's purposes, we have 4 milestones. Number one, 50% of registered voters at every polling unit in Nigeria to be a woman. Number two, every woman's vote in every election should count. Number three, 50% of all offices in every major party to be held by women. Number four, 50% of all elected positions at all levels to be held by women. So what we're saying is when Nigeria looks like that, election after election, then we can say that women have equal political power. So we're going to hear from an organization that is working on milestone number 4, Elect Her. Their goal is to sponsor 35 women to elected office in the next election cycle with a $10 million fund. And we are proud to have them as a partner for GlassCon 2021. So let's hear from the co-founder of Elect Her, Ibijoke Faborede. Ibijoke, thank you so much for joining us. Is she there? Oh, she's not. Okay. All right, so we're going to just pivot very quickly and move on to our panel conversation then. Christmas came early, yes. So perhaps towards the end of the show, we'll have Ibijoke talk to us about Elect Her's plans. Okay, so our panelists, my God, I'm excited. Let's take a look at who we have on this panel. She is a former 3-term member of the House of Representatives from Bende, Abia State. 3 terms, not easy by any means. So when she talks about winning elections in Nigeria, when this woman talks about it, I listen. And she wasn't one of those members who just signed register. Oh no, she was chairperson, House Committee on Foreign Affairs and on International Donors and Civil Society in Nigeria. And she earned a reputation as a champion of the Green Chamber's right to hold the executive accountable. She's Honorable Nenna Elendu Ukeje. Welcome to GlassCon, Nenna.
Thank you very much, Sandra.
Then for our next panelist, we have a media and government relations professional who works at the intersection of politics and civil society. She's a member of the advisory board of the World Youth Movement for Democracy. She's the coordinator, Progressive Young Women, a platform for young women within the APC, set up with the objective of enhancing young women's participation in the political process. She served on the board of the All Progressives Congress from 2014 to 2018. She served as special assistant to the former Speaker of the House, Yakubu Dogara, from 2015 to 2018. And in 2019, she ran to represent Abeokuta North, Odeda, I hope I'm saying that right, Obafemi Owode constituency in the House of Representatives. If you're Yoruba here and I just murdered your constituency, I apologize. Her name is Rinsola Abiola. Welcome to GlassCon, Rinsola.
Thank you so much for having me, Sandra.
And our next panelist was elected as a councillor in the Federal Capital Territory. She also worked in the youth mobilization arm of the APC 2015 presidential campaign. After that, she served as a technical assistant in the office of the vice president. She's a grassroots politician who has leadership roles or has founded various groups, including Nigerian Youth Forum London, the Arawa Association London, Nigeria Liberty Forum, Nigeria Youth League London, Muslima Global Foundation, and the APC Young Women Forum. She's Honorable Zainab Buba Galadima. Welcome to GlassCon, Zainab. Okay, and then our very next panelist is an award-winning actor, philanthropist, and global speaker. She knows quite a bit about storytelling. In fact, she was a governor in one of her most recent movies. I particularly enjoyed Fourth Republic. Because of her philanthropy, she has been honored as an ambassador for many humanitarian projects. She is passionate about female empowerment and women's health, and she's worked with a national cervical cancer prevention program. She's also proud to be an ambassador for Project Alert, an NGO protecting and promoting women's rights and advocating zero tolerance of violence. She's also a goodwill ambassador to the Nigerian Women Trust Fund. And she ran to represent Calabar South Federal Constituency House of Representatives in 2015. I'm talking about somebody who was also appointed as the Special Assistant to Governor of Cross River State back in 2014. Kate Henshaw, welcome to GlassCon.
Thank you, Sandra. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Our next panelist is a lawyer and the co-founder of YAGA Africa. YAGA provides research, analysis, solutions, and training in the democracy and governance space. Their goal is to equip citizens to lead change in their community. She's one of the architects of the highly successful Not Too Young to Run. You remember Not Too Young to Run. Cynthia Mbamalo, welcome to GlassCon.
Hello, Sandra. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
And our next panelist is a women's rights advocate. Cryptocurrency exchange. She's a co-founder of the Feminist Coalition, an advocacy group made up of young Nigerian women with a core focus on education, financial freedom, representation of women in public office. Her name is Damilola Odufuwa. Dami, welcome to GlassCon.
Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me, Sandra.
And our next panelist is a Nigerian politician and strategist. She founded the Nidari Foundation, which focuses on women and youth empowerment, crisis management, and disaster relief. In 2018, she contested for membership in the Kaduna State House of Assembly. She's Ndi Kato. Ndi, welcome to GlassCon. And our very next panelist, our final panelist, is representing one of GlassCon's partners. She's a political and economic officer with the U.S. Consulate General in Lagos. She just arrived in Lagos in December 2020, and her work focuses on reporting political and economic issues. Brianna Olson, welcome to GlassCon 2021.
Thank you so much, Sandra. It's such an honor to be here.
All right, great. So let's talk. Let's talk. Now, this is how we're structuring this conversation. Remember, I told you that we have our milestones, 4 of those milestones: getting half the voter registrations, making every woman's vote count, getting half the positions in the major political parties, getting half the elected government positions. And so our talk will revolve around how to achieve these milestones, action plans, like I said. We're going to break it up into 3 conversations, kind of like the big 3, if you listen to Hard Facts on Nigeria Info. If you don't, tomorrow is a great day to start. It airs at 3 p.m. every weekday, 3 p.m. To 7 p.m. every day. So 15 minutes each, that's what we're going to dedicate to each of these questions. First, we're going to talk about how to increase women's power in parties. Next, we're going to talk about getting out the women's vote and protecting those votes. And then we're going to talk about getting more women elected. So let's get started. In your typical mainstream Nigerian political party, who are the key decision makers at each level? What are their considerations when they are selecting people to lead and manage the party? I think I'm going to start with somebody who's actually done a lot of grassroots organizing. So Rinsola Abiola, you take our first question.
All right. If you're looking at the party structure, who has influence within it, I think it would have to think about at what level exactly it is that we're considering. So say you want to vie for a position within the party structure in perhaps your ward. The key stakeholders will be the power brokers within that ward. If you want to vie for elective office, for instance, and say you're looking at state assembly, then your key stakeholders, you'll be doing your stakeholder mapping within your constituency. Say your constituency is made up of one local government, then you'll be looking at the key stakeholders within the party, your ward chairman, your ward excos, the chairman, woman leader, secretary, youth leader, and other excos within the ward structure. And then in every ward, you have leaders who are not necessarily part of the party structure officially, but they are leaders within the ward, within that community. They command a lot of influence. So they are also part of the stakeholders that you have to consult. And then looking at the local government itself, there are excos within the local government that you also have to talk to, and other leaders within that local government structure within the party who also, the same way applies at ward level, necessarily are not members of the party excos, the official excos. And then, of course, that's just when you're trying to emerge within the party system. And that I think is the most important step that needs to be taken before you then move on to wider stakeholder consultations after you've secured the ticket.
Zainab, did she leave anything out? Zainab, your mic is muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, if you're looking for a position within the party structure, like she said, obviously you have to consult stakeholders. But the thing, what I think she left out is when you're looking to be in a position, obviously most positions are vacant. So you have to look for the stakeholders, the party powerfuls. So these are the people you need to consult, because that's how it's structured in Nigeria. You cannot just, wake up and say, okay, I want to do this. There are a couple of people you need to meet, and these people you need to identify. So and same goes for ward, local government, state government, and federal. And we have the same positions, like from bottom to top, like same number, 27 or so, and so you need to identify those people and have the majority of people, on your side to be able to, achieve something.
I see. Now,
Yeah.
We know that one of the major qualities that makes a party decision maker is funding, right?
Yeah.
Those who can bring out money to fund a political structure. They basically end up having more of a say. We heard from Elect Her earlier. Well, we haven't. We heard from their earlier video where they were talking about doing something different, funding candidates. Is there also a need, in your opinion, Zainab, I'm going to ask you again and then I'll move on to somebody else. Is there a need for women and women's groups to find ways to fund political structures that outlive a single election?
Yes, it's very, very necessary, because this is just the basis. Basically, in Nigeria, if you do not have money, it's really, really hard for you to, go far. And you need to maintain that structure because they make the decisions, for example, when I was running, I knew there were about 27 executives and there was only one woman, and she was the only person that had my back. So, and the rest, you have to buy them. That's what they, so if you have your structure, you will be able to go far. But if not, then everything you come with, they frustrate.
I'm curious what Honorable Keje has to say, because she won 3 elections. So for a lot of things, I'm going to come to her for reference because she's gone and done it. So she'll be like my reference textbook. Honorable Keje, we hear a lot about structure, and it's going to come up again and again as we talk about elections. You can walk us through what a structure is, how it works, why so many people say it's absolutely necessary.
Well, Cynthia, first of all, every election in Nigeria, the way the elections are structured, you have to go through the primary election processes. Now, for the primary elections, it is the delegates that would come up and elect the would-be candidate of the party. Now, most of the time it is taken from the 27 men who make up the chairman, the deputy chairman, the youth leader, the woman leader, and so on, and ex officio, depending from, it differs from party to party, but in some political parties, it is those people who either elect the 3-man delegates who would elect you in the primaries, or they are the ones who would be the delegates themselves. Now, as has been said by Derisola, these are the people who basically hold your political future in their hands. And if they're not on your side, it makes it a lot more expensive. Now, which is not to say that even if they were on your side, you wouldn't be required to give them a pittance, but it just makes it a bit cheaper. And so the struggle for the structure is basically the initial scramble to get the party officials on your side in the hope that when you go to the elections, they would be on your side. And so, you know, everybody talks about the party structure. You want the party structure in your ward, you want the party structure in the local government, you want the state party chairman to be someone who is probably, you probably come from the same political family, and it goes all the way up to national. And so for a lot of people, it is absolutely, in fact, for anybody who's running in an election, it is absolutely important to have the party structure on your side. Otherwise, it is an exercise in futility.
Brianna, does the US government run or support any programs meant to help Nigerian women play a deeper role in democracy? Brianna?
Sandra, yes, we do. We support many programs aimed at supporting gender equality and women's empowerment. But we also do work on programs focused on broader issues that seek to help Nigerian women gain political inclusion, such as strengthening more broadly democratic institutions and pushing for increased transparency and good governance. So, I mean, one of the programs that comes to mind is a program through the U.S. Department of State for the International Visitor Leadership Program. This is a professional exchange program that provides current and emerging foreign leaders, including in Nigeria and around the world, short-term visits to the United States to experience our country firsthand, but also cultivate lasting relationships with American counterparts. So through the 50 plus years of this program, we have sent thousands of women, from journalists to government officials to civil society activists, to the United States. And we try to make sure we have a balance in that and actively recruit them in this exchange program. So this is just another opportunity for the US and foreign leaders. It's just one example to gain mutual understanding of shared issues and to give opportunities to strengthen democracy and governance.
I see. Now, to have power in a party, you need numbers. To have numbers, you need membership registration, membership cards. But so often we hear about how the party hierarchy frustrates the process and suppresses cards. How do you work around that? I really want to hear from Zainab on this particular one, from Zainab, from Ndi, from Nenna. How do you work around this particular problem of, suppressing your ability to get membership cards for the political parties? Zainab, your mic?
It all goes on with mobilization of people, creating awareness, making them understand that it is very necessary for them to belong to a political party or to register with a party, and so on. And when it comes to aspiring, or when they see that you have something to offer, that's your bargaining power. They can't ignore you. Once you have the numbers, once they see how powerful, with numbers you have with your numbers, then it's a bit easier. But still, like we said, those stakeholders, you need to get in good with them. It's really.
So you're saying that the first thing you should do is get your numbers up, and when you do get your numbers up, then you have a bargaining power.
Yeah.
How did you do it? Because you won and became a councillor. How did you do it, Zainab?
Well, first of all, I just served, and I decided, okay, maybe I should run, and I started from the lowest office, but my ward was the largest in Nigeria in terms of registered voters. So what I did was, we requested for the register and they refused to give us. So we had to get the secretary, it's a bit of a manipulation and scheming kind of thing. So finally—
Oh, women can scheme, we can scheme.
Oh yeah, we did. And
we can scheme.
And we schemed, and we got one guy that had the register on our side, and that was how we got him to register a lot of people, because it was a direct primaries kind of thing. So, and when they saw that really we meant business and I had a lot of people on my side, they had no option but to, the other guy just had to give up, because, he didn't even show up, and he was like, no, he has stepped down. But we went in for the primaries and his people were not there, but they saw our numbers. So like I said, if you have your numbers, that's your bargaining power. If they can't beat you, they will try and give you a chance, with somewhat a level playing ground, to be able to, have your chance.
Lagos, if you are listening via the radio, I should tell you that at 5:30 we have to go back to the sports gang, because there's a big game about to come live, and you have my head if I make you miss that game. But if you want to keep listening to GlassCon 2021, we're streaming live on Facebook, we're streaming live on YouTube, or of course you are already in the room in our Zoom meeting. I'm going to give you a chance to win some data back, because we understand that you're spending data on this meeting, and data isn't very cheap. And thanks to the Open Society Initiative for West Africa, we have data to give back to a lot of people who are participating in the Zoom meeting. So we'll give you a chance to win as we go along. So just stick around if you want to find out how. We do hope that you're tweeting with the hashtag GlassCon 2021. If someone's saying something that you find very insightful, tweet at us. If you have a question, tweet at us. We're going to take tweets from Twitter pretty soon. But first up, let's take some of the questions that have been coming in right here on the webinar. So we have Komolafe Ayodeji. Komolafe Ayodeji says, looking at the Nigerian context, especially now that we're facing more than enough tension in herdsmen attacks, insurgency, all other vices threatening our unity, how best do you think we can practically wrestle a major political position for our women? I wonder if Cynthia has an answer for that.
Yeah. Hi, Sandra, and hello, everyone. Very interesting question. And I'm just reading the question, and I was just thinking about, what INSEM talks about public narrative, isn't that organized? Now, we're not just pushing for more women in power because we think it's fancy to have women in power. No, we're asking to have more women in power because we believe that women actually have the capacity to lead and to provide quality leadership. And I believe that one of the things women connect, or we can connect on as citizens, as women, as Nigerians, as both men and women, is the fact that we all have this major challenge of insecurity, and that women are major victims when you talk about insecurity. You have large number of women and girls abducted. You have women and girls who do not have access to basic health, who were losing based on the fact that they are in a society that is really insecure. So one of the things I believe that we can do in getting women into power and changing this narrative is, one, for women who are interested in contesting for office. I mean, we have about 712 days, the next general elections, that at this moment, whoever wants to contest in the next elections has begun her organizing right now, but organizing around issues and values that the people care about. Because at the end of the day, we need to provide a counter narrative to what the old guards, the men who have been in the system, have always pushed forward. And that is that women provide, that we have an alternative to we provide an alternative to leadership, and we have better solutions to our problems. And what is that major challenge? How do women build power amongst the people to start demanding better security? We want to organize around issues that people connect with. We are all feeling the brunt of insecurity. So every narrative we are pushing now, we're not just pushing narrative of elect me because I'm a woman, but rather we're providing solutions. If I'm in office, this is how we would solve our insecurity challenge in this community. Let's say I'm running for state assemblies, for instance, you're focusing on your state constituency. These are the kinds of laws I want to push forward. This is what I think in office. So building campaigns around values and issues people care about. I believe that is a better, that is one approach to engaging in this particular process. But the other part of that for me is also providing an opportunity to engage with the people. Now, what is the major challenge with insecurity? There is this gulf or gap between the leaders and the people. People are not talking with the leaders. Leaders are not listening to the people. We don't have that engagement ongoing at different levels. And I think one way women can begin to build power now is beginning that conversation now, engaging the people. Let's start having chats in communities at different levels. What are your problems? Now, there's that value in personal connection. And I think I'll connect it to the point Zainab raised about having the numbers, because how do you build the numbers? You need the social capital to do that. The people need to know who you are, what you care about, and if you would represent them, if you would speak for them. And the only way they would trust you or give you the power to, or give you that opportunity to lead them is to be guaranteed that at this early stage, you're already engaging them. They are seeing you, they are feeling your presence, and they understand your issues, but you're also speaking up for them on issues that matter, that you're not silent when issues that matter come up. So that way, you begin to create a relationship with the people, because at the end of it all, what women need to show is not just that I'm ready to lead, but that I have a solution to the problems, and that I connect with your problems, I connect with your values, and together we can solve this. But the only way to solve this if I'm in office. So I believe for me at this moment is a lot around organizing around issues that the people care about. It's about building power by connecting with the values that are dear to the people. It's about community engagement and outreach, because lots of citizens just want to hear from the government. The government is silent at different levels. And if we can step in at this early stage to build that gap, to provide that solution to the lack of conversations ongoing in our communities, I think you will begin to build power and that social capital that women need. Because at the end of the day, people want people who can deliver on the job. And the only way you can prove to them you can deliver on the job is by showing them that you understand the issues and you actually know how to get there with them, not for them, but you're getting there with them. But at the end of it, you're thinking, you're connecting, you're working together, and what you're doing is representing and not just acting on their behalf.
Cynthia Mbamalu there, co-founder Yega Africa. We've got another question here. I'm going to ask this question to someone who has been in the House of Representatives 3 times, for 3 terms, not 3 times, for 3 terms. Kemi says, just like how federal character is included in the 1999 Constitution, can we push for the Nigerian Constitution to include a certain percentage for gender equality, where both genders are adequately represented? Is this possible? Kemi's asking. I'll let Honorable Elendu Keje answer that. Oh, your mic is mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. This is a recurring question, and everybody asks this question at every platform, because we have tried everything from moral suasion to the common sense arguments to the economic arguments to the human rights arguments. And we have seen at every point in time that we keep getting thrown back to the gender parity index. And, but in the House of Representatives, I always ask this question: Yes, we have constantly said that legislations would be absolutely necessary. There's a gender policy that stated that we must have 35% affirmative action. Now, that gender policy, of course, did not have the backing of the law, and so it is observed mainly in breach. Initially, there was under the Olusegun Obasanjo regime, we met that, but of course, since then, nobody has, and it was amended under the Goodluck Jonathan regime as well, but since then, it has been ignored. I believe that, yes, there can be some kind of legislation. Section 42 of the Constitution is very clear. The intent of the Constitution is that there is no gender, that there will be gender parity. But we don't get to see that. We've also advocated sunshine legislations that say that until we achieve gender parity, we'll have this piece of legislation in place, and after we achieve gender parity, it goes. And that's the reason for sunshine legislation. We have advocated quotas, but the truth of the matter is that it's a chicken and egg situation. Are we unable to pass the legislation because we don't have enough women, or do we not have enough women? And that's the reason we can't pass the legislation. When I was in the House of Representatives, there were 22 women. In the 9th House of Representatives, there's 11 women out of 360 men. In the legislature, it is 1 man, 1 vote. Of course, a lot of people talk about the not too young to run vote. Timing is key. At the time, it was just before elections. They threw everything at us, including the kitchen sink. We were blackmailed, and there was a trade-off, which is what a lot of legislations are. But getting a constitutional amendment is absolutely difficult. It is a rigorous process, and we just don't have the numbers. I wish I could come at you with more exciting news and say that a piece of legislation is going to be the magic bullet to all our problems. But I listened to one Yaga program a couple of months ago, and the INEC chairman said it very succinctly, that the reason is not the lack of legislation, but it is stereotypes, emotional, sexual, physical stereotypes. And until we help society unlearn those stereotypes, and of course, in the legislature, your job as a legislator is to collate the aggregate opinion of a critical mass of the people at whose pleasure you serve. If 90% of the people at whose pleasure you serve don't want more women in the legislature, then it is very difficult for you to push a piece of legislation that does anything contrary to what the people do. So is it doable? We can continue it. We'll continue to work at it, but you know, it is tough. It's a brutal terrain. It is.
No one thought that Nigerians would be able to contribute to keep a protest going for as long as the NSAS protest did. And yet somehow the Feminist Coalition managed to do it. So I wonder, Dami, is this, like Honorable Elenduke just said, a chicken and egg situation? Which one do you think needs to come first? Women in the houses, in the Senate, to be able to make laws that allow more women in the houses and in the Senate? Or do these laws need to come so that women can get into the houses and the Senate? How do we get around this particular problem?
So first of all, I just want to say that I've been loving what everyone has been saying. I've been nodding my head at what Cynthia, during Salah, Zainab, everyone has been saying, because I 100% agree. But I also do agree with Honorable Nana on the chicken egg situation. I think both need to happen at the same time. I think the laws need to be in place to make it easier for women who are coming after to be able to get into office. But at the same time, like you said, we need the women who are currently there to support those laws and support those bills and support the idea of women coming into office. And I wanted to touch on something earlier that I think maybe Zainab said about money and power. For even us at the Feminist Coalition, part of the reason why I founded it was I felt that what was missing in the fight for women's rights was money and power to actively galvanize and actively do everything every woman has said here. So build the structure, enlighten voters, build, the social capital. Money and power, to me, rule everything. So we need both. But as you said, in terms of legislation, that needs to be put into place. So what I think that what we can do about that is, okay, if more women are interested in politics and enlightened voters have become enlightened, then they know, okay, we need to get these petitions to get, our lawmakers to focus on this bill. Like, I think there's what bill has still not been passed, something around gender-based violence. I can't remember the exact one now, but there's so many bills that women are asking to be passed, but haven't really gone into play, things like that. But then I also feel, beyond us saying, okay, we want this, we want that, we definitely need those women who are currently in office to push for the agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, but how do we get around the problem of the chicken and eggs, Dami?
I don't know if any of us really have the answer to that chicken and egg problem. I think that's why it's a chicken and egg problem. If I had to say from my perspective as someone who's outside politics, I think it's my job and every citizen's job to educate others around them, to get them aware of what is happening in our country in terms of, the amount of women in power, the amount of women in holding office. And there was something that I can't remember who said it. I'm so sorry, I've forgotten the name now, but someone talked about this. I think it was Elect Her in the beginning, about equal representation, greater representation, and having capable and competent women. But a lot of the citizens don't actually know the women who are running. So I guess that touches on the social capital aspect. They also don't know what the candidates represent, and they don't know, all we see are rulers who we think are not capable or competent. So first of all, we need to know those people, and then it's our job to educate others, to vote, to enlighten others, and then to put our money where our mouth is and support these candidates. A big thing for me is community support. So I think that every individual has the power to support a candidate in the way that they can.
That's quite great. Derinsola Biola, I'm curious what your perspective is, Derinsola. Do you have some sort of magical answer to the chicken and egg problem that Honorable Ellen Dukeje mentioned? Because that's the crux of it. That's the main part, I think. If we force legislation to do it, then we definitely have a shot. Then we can begin to organize around other things like party structure, funding the structure, maintaining the structure. At least we know that, okay, we have the backing of the law.
I don't think there's a silver bullet that's going to solve the issue of underrepresentation. I don't think there's any magical snap of the finger that's going to make underrepresentation go away. But I do think that one of the things that we could do, or one of the things that we need.
Right.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, all right. I think one of the things that we need, we need enabling laws and we need enabling policies, but at the same time, we also need to cultivate that interest in politics, not just in women this time around, but in young women. I talk about this a lot, and it's why I make sure that I do a lot of work in mobilizing young women, particularly for political participation and inclusion. There are a number of factors that militate against women's inclusion in politics and governance. And there's a huge issue of funding. There's the problem with societal conditioning. I've tried to organize programs where we couldn't get young women to attend because their father said they couldn't come and politics was no business for them. And then I've also talked to young women whom I believe to be, would I say, enlightened, who wanted nothing at all to do with politics. So it's like we need to take a very deliberate approach to correcting underrepresentation. There's the place of orientation and just making women understand that they have a place in politics is something that they can do. There is a place for laws and policies, and then there is a place for citizens' action. As Damilola said, we need to take it upon ourselves to enlighten other voters, talk to other people about the need to support qualified women candidates, And then we also need to learn to put our money where our mouth is. Politics in Nigeria, especially if you're running for office, it's pretty much the most expensive, the most capital intensive thing I've ever done in my entire life. And for a lot of women who do not have the resources, who do not have the means to fund a campaign, it's very difficult. So you find a lot of people who are perhaps qualified, who maybe have that interest, but they cannot muster the resources that they need to actually compete in this terrain. It is very, very capital intensive. And irrespective of how much you spend, there really is no guarantee that you're going to win. There are a number of factors that also matter: your party structure, how strong that party is, the people who are backing you. If you're running on a smaller platform, for instance, whatever you would spend on an established party, just budget ×2 or ×3, and there is still no guarantee that you're going to win. So there are quite a number of factors that determine, one, whether or not you get to emerge; two, whether you stand a chance of winning when you do emerge as a candidate. And it's like we need to be able to support women at every step of the way to ensure that we were able to increase the number of women who actually break through that hurdle. And then another thing that I think we also need to pay attention to is this: there's more than one way to skin a cat. I think that's how it's said. And if we're unable to get women into elective positions, we also need to focus on increasing representation of women in appointive positions, because even though women may not be able to get into office through the ballot, there's a lot that women can contribute through appointed positions. Take Hadiza Bala Usman and the great work she's doing at the Nigerian Port Authority. Look at Sharon Ikezo, the great work she did as PTAD DG and now as Minister of State for Environment. We can look to a number of women who currently occupy appointed positions in Nigeria. The Minister for Women Affairs is also doing quite good in pushing for enhanced inclusion. So if as we work on increasing the number of women who make it through the elective process, we should also work at increasing the number of women who make it through the hurdle when it comes to political appointments. Some states have done well. We have Kaduna, we have Kwara. I think in Kogi now, every vice chairman in a local government is female. Some other states are looking to do something similar, but we can continue to intensify the advocacy so that within state executive councils, women are better represented. I don't see any reason why we should be having a male commissioner for women affairs, for instance. And I think that's the case in, is it Adamawa? And, in some cabinets, minus that position for women affairs, you hardly find women anywhere else. And as we talk about the national parliament, the National Assembly, we also need to focus on state assemblies, and we need to focus on local governance, yes. Because you will find in lots of states where you will not find a single woman in the assembly, and then it kind of explains why the Child Rights Act, for instance, will take so long to pass. Even if we're able to get the Gender and Equal Opportunity Bill to scale through the National Assembly, it will still have to be domesticated at state level. And who will that bill go to at state level? We've had states like Ekiti, for instance. Ekiti has the Gender and Equal Opportunity Bill. It was passed as far back as 2013 or 2014. Even, before the whole advocacy regarding this at federal level came up. If we have people who are proactive at state level, these laws will be passed in our respective states. We have sex offenders registers in a number of states now. Lagos has the domestic violence unit. When you have representation, when you have people who are willing to listen and who are willing to engage, we won't necessarily need to wait on the federal parliament to pass these things. We'll begin to make headway at state level. So we need to pay a lot of attention to what's going on in our states, elected positions at state levels, appointed positions at state level. And we also need to pay attention to who gets where at the federal level and who gets appointed at the federal level. And then we need to support women at every step of the political process. Funding is very important. Forget what anybody tells you. They will say that there's a legal limit to election expenditure, for instance. I can tell you that whatever legitimate election expenses you have, it will probably cover it, adverts, jingles and stuff. But most of the spending you will do is in mobilization. You call people for a meeting, you pay them. People choose to come and visit you, you give them money. You say hello to people, they expect money. A lot of women do not have the resources to handle this. And that is why you'll find that if you look at women who, a lot of women who are able to cross that hurdle and emerge to the ballots, they are either from wealthy backgrounds or, from political backgrounds, very influential backgrounds. There's a lot of money there. It shouldn't, politics, participation should not be the sole preserve of people who are independently wealthy. We should be able to support candidates who we believe have the right ideas and will be accountable to the people if they get into office.
Risola Biola speaking amazingly there. Somebody else wants to say something?
Yes, I wanted to actually add to what she was saying. And
Yeah,
this
definitely.
kind of goes back. So from everything that I've heard, and as someone that's not in the political space, first of all, this platform is so educated. And I think a lot of people don't have this knowledge. They don't know about why it's important to galvanize local government, state government, federal appointive officers. They don't know any of this. And so I think our first job is education, especially of women. We've seen the impact of women voters in countries around the world. We've seen the power that we have. When women say they're going to do something, they're going to do it. So that education is so important. And then, like as Darian said, the money and the power. I think everybody underestimates the impact of money in everything we do in this world. Money makes the world go round. Financial equality for women will eventually, to me, lead to gender equality. So in everything that I'm thinking, if I'm going to say I'm going to support the candidates, I need to know that, okay, everybody has to be willing to support financially. And I think there is this denial of, how impactful money is. Even to get these women to be... even to do the education of voters, money is involved. And I think people always forget that. And then another thing that, you mentioned was the chicken and egg thing. Sorry to go back to it, but on legislation.
It's fine. I hope you do have an answer now.
I feel like I answered it, but what I'm trying to add to that is, I don't know why one thing has to happen. I think things can happen at the same time. I think we can be pushing for legislation and more laws that favor women. I think we can also be doing what Darian said, getting women into other positions, appointive positions. I think we can also be, supporting candidates financially that we believe in, that are competent and capable. And I also think we can be educating people. So I don't know if the chicken and egg thing, I think that why can't everything happen at the same time?
Why can't we walk and chew gum at the same time?
Why can't we multitask? We always talk about this. Exactly. We can walk and chew gum. So why can't we multitask and get all these things done at the same time? Everybody take your corner. Everybody do what you are good at.
Do what you can do.
That.
Honorable
Exactly.
Elendu Keje, I'm curious what you have to say about that. Do you think that's too optimistic, or do you think, we could walk and chew gum?
Yes, we can. And women multitask. But you see, the truth of the matter is that I hear about the movements, and I'm very excited about the movements. And I sat back and I watched everything that happened with the NSAS movement, and it was amazing. I mean, amazing young women doing things that people in my generation probably can't do. So yes, to the Sorosoke generation, well done. But it's important, and they say not enough women, but the numbers, statistics won't lie. 2,970 women were on the ballots. Only 62 were elected. Those are our facts. Now, when we had the gender policy, it was government with the political will to elect 35 women to appoint 35% of the women into appointed positions. Now, it all comes back to the political will. I'm going to say something that may not be very popular, because this is a feminine thing. But I believe that we must have conversations in a way that makes it attractive for the men to want to work with us. I make the point. We all sit down and anecdotally, we're very excited about women doing amazing things around the world. And to cap up the cherry on our cake was the Kamala Harris story, an amazing, accomplished woman who became vice president. But I asked the question, and I'm hoping, and I keep throwing up these interesting questions, I hope. And I'm asking the question that had President Biden not decided that he wanted a woman, and a woman of color, would she have been vice president? And so I think that even when we start to have these conversations about opening up the spaces and taking the spaces, then let me make the point that this year, challenging the status quo was such an interesting topic, title. And I looked up what challenging means, and it means create a stake, upset the apple cart, all of them negative, and I think they're beautiful. But the truth of the matter is that women, we must start to calibrate the narrative in a way that comes to the realization that to pull back from stereotypes, traditional stereotypes on our own, is almost dead in the woods. I understand that there's so many optimistic stories, but I believe that whatever narrative it is that we must come up with must be one that explains to the men that they must be a part of this movement. I have sat down and I have watched at several fora that it takes the people in government to have the political will to open up the spaces for us. Of course, female movements can come up with ensuring that they are appointive positions for 35% of the women. And it is that, those are facts. But can we do all this, chew gum, unlearn the stereotypes, make the Nigerian man step out of the way for us, create the opportunity where women have all the money, create the opportunity where you go to vote at the polling unit and they come up with their AK-47s and they're firing blanks. Can we, I mean, there's just so many real-time situations that mitigate against the women. COVID-19 has exacerbated all the problems that we have in the world. So even Nigerian women who are doing pretty okay, the informal sector, have had all their funds wiped out. Can we undo COVID-19? Those are serious issues. And I think that unless we start to calibrate a narrative in a way that is realistic, in a way that opens up the spaces, in a way, and I understand engaging. But as Derisala said, there is nobody who has gone to an election who has not campaigned on the things, especially women, that matter to women the most. Infant and maternal mortality, creating a base for women, creating a voice for women. But the truth of the matter is, like in the words of JFK, that unless you have an informed electorate, whatever stories you tell are absolutely useless. We've come to the place where vote buying is the thing for today. Everybody is buying votes. So it goes right back to what Damilola said, money. Can you buy the votes? Do you have the AK-47s? That is what real elections are. You know, that's really what I think. But I think that movements can put pressure on governments for appointive positions, because it is well within the right of government, and there is a gender policy. All we're asking governments to do is to adhere to the gender policy. But I can tell you that the chicken and egg situation is a real situation. 11 women have 11 votes. There are 360 men in parliament. 1 man, 1 vote. It is going to be difficult for 11 people to pass the votes. Honorable
Nana, I love what you said. And I think that's a good point, that if Joe Biden wasn't willing to, put Kamala in that position, would she be on the ballot? Would she have run? Would she have won and become vice president? Exactly. But I think women consistently ask, well, we shouldn't actually ask, we demand equal representation. And I think men are fully aware of this. They just don't want to share it. I think women do their part in saying, this is how it would help you to increase female leadership. It'll help better your economy. Look at New Zealand, look at this. Women are consistently giving examples, but it is up to men to also make that effort to say, okay, what is my part in ensuring equal representation? Because it's not just on the women.
But turkeys don't vote for Christmas, Dami. So how do we get them?
So I guess it's the education factor that you and Honorable Nana discussed.
But we've educated and like you just said, they know, right?
They know.
So how do we get them to say, okay, take it? Because again, turkeys don't vote for Christmas.
Is the power. Until we show them we have power, which I think we're already doing. I think it's for them to realize that women have power and to take us seriously. But I don't even know if I have the answers, because I'm just thinking, what have we tried? We've tried all these things. Okay, how far has it taken us? Okay, what more can we do? Is it all of us just coming together to push at the same time? I don't know, but I feel like women have said over and over,
I'm curious what Kate Hensher thinks, because Kate is in the business of storytelling. So perhaps could we employ or deploy storytelling in such a way that men see that, okay, fine, let's give it to them. So for instance, I watched the movie Wives on Strike, and you had all the women close up shop. you know, for weeks on end until their husbands agreed to vote for a particular candidate that they wanted. I mean, it was comedy, but I don't know. Do we need to deploy stuff like that?
It's funny you asked that question. Well, going back in history, we had the About Women's riots. We had women who were in charge of so much. They were in charge of whole communities. We had Queen Amina. I think over the years, we have sort of relinquished that power that we had and sort of taken a, how do I say, a peaceable position so as not to rock the boat. Yes. And now we're trying to come back up. So we've left room for nothing against the men. We need the men so much, but we've sort of like, okay, let's relax. And now we're coming back and they're like, from where to where? You hear the arguments and the discussions on the House, in the House of Reps, and how some of the men talk. Like, if you let the women, they will take over. We're not taking over anything. We're all human beings, and we demand and expect equal representation. That's why anything that has to do with women doesn't get a look-see. I mean, because there isn't enough power behind it. We don't have enough female voices. And even when we do, we need some strong men in there to be on our side, you know, because it's male and female. Side? By advocating, talking to them. These men have wives now. What are their wives doing?
But we're doing that. We're talking to them, we're advocating. How are we doing it wrong? Why is it not entering? Or why is it entering and going out?
Maybe they're not doing it well. I don't know. Maybe they're not doing it enough, you know, because we do need the men. We can't exist on our own. So also can they not exist on their own? So I think we need the numbers, like a few of the panelists have said. We need to show that we have the numbers. And if you do not accede to our request, then, hey, you're not going to get any headway either. So we need to continue raising our voices. We need that togetherness, because sometimes women are not together. Because I don't see how there'll be so many women on the ballot and they don't get voted for. The women don't vote for the women. Even when you know good women, you don't vote for them. Doesn't make sense.
Okay, I'm going to come to Ndi Kato. I think she's joined us now. Ndi Kato, what are your thoughts? Okay, I think she's left again. But you know, a lot of people who have been on this panel have mentioned strength in numbers. They've talked about numbers again and again and again. Honorable Ukeja talked about the violence and AK-47s at elections. And Zainab, I want to know what a realistic avenue is for groups of women to protect their votes and the votes of their community. Once there's violence, it becomes harder for women to compete. And there is a high amount of violence in Nigerian elections. So what realistic avenues are open for groups of women to protect their votes and the votes of their community? How were you able to do your campaigning? How were you able to get in there? How were you able to avoid the violence that surrounds elections? Or are there not, is there not as much violence with councillorship elections?
Yes, there's less violence. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? There's less violence. People do not really come out for local government elections. They don't really come out. The most important one for them is the House of Reps, Senate, and President, most of it, especially here in Abuja. But what we did was, you know, we campaigned, and, you know, what I did was every polling unit I had more people protecting it than, you know, ordinarily, you know, you would have like 3 agents and stuff. So even though I had 3 agents, I had like another maybe like 10 people around just to see that nothing happens. Not the violence type, but because anything can happen, you know, anytime. Because some people, they take this power, no matter how small, very seriously. And and with that, you also needed money to do that. And for example, now, when, like you said, protecting the votes. Obviously, we used men because women will get harassed and stuff like that. And really, truly, women just came out to vote. They didn't really, you know, felt the need to stay and protect the votes. If women with awareness, with education, they can come out, you know, and, you know, in numbers, because what people do not understand is women vote more than men, and we're more reliable. And these men, they know it, and they need us more than we need them, especially when they are canvassing for votes. If you see a man coming back on and on and on, especially if he's getting voted, not rigged,
in, most of his voters are women, and he does a lot of women things. And like Honorable Nana said, we need the men on our side. I had the support of all the men in my life, my friends, my brothers, my father, everybody stood up for me. So we really, really need to get this man on our side to be able to help us, you know, see through, because they play these games, you know, we're just new at it. And basically, the women have a lot of power. They have a lot of power to show. Once we understand our power, then they can't do anything else, you know, to stop us. But it is a process, you know, it's a gradual process. You know, we need to get women involved, you know, in our social circle. Women get women. We do a lot of networking business. We can start doing that kind of thing in terms of politics. Allow women to understand the fact that being involved, not having to run for office, but being involved, you know, voting or, you know, having a place in a political setting is very, very important, because these are the issues like NSA's you know, issue, where a lot of people that came out, they can identify with the problem. You know, I was a victim of police brutality, so I identified with the problem. So we have a lot of problem, and this social problems are women's issues. Basically, these men are our children, they're our brothers, they're our husbands. And, you know, if it gets bad, it's the woman that has to fix it, you know, and they know it, you know. And because we do not understand our power, that is why they do what they do.
I like that. You know, before I move on to my next question, let me remind you that you could get a chance to win some of your data back. All you need to tell me on Twitter, go on Twitter right now, use the hashtag GlassCon2021. We're going to, of course, cross-check your name on Twitter with your name on the meeting and the email with which you registered. So good luck if you want to do some Mojoro. This is for those who are watching on Facebook and on Twitter. But yes, somebody on this convention, somebody at this convention said, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Who was that? Someone said, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. The first 20 people who get it correctly will get their data refunded, courtesy the Open Society Initiative for West Africa. But yes, I'm going to play a video right now. It was very, very popular in 2019. I'm sure that most of you have seen this particular video from the 2019 elections. It's playing right now. Yes. And this video from the 2019 elections had women in Ogubolo local government. So you have these women in Ogubolo local government in River State, right? Out in a collation center to protect ballots from armed men. Every time someone says strengthen numbers, that's what I keep thinking about. Is this type of thing replicable and scalable? Is this kind of action, is this the kind of action that women need to be taking nationwide? What does it take to mobilize and train women to pull off something like this regularly? Ndikato is finally on the meeting, so perhaps she'll be able to give us answers. Hi, Indy.
Hi, Sandra.
Yes.
So, in terms of mobilization, to be honest, you know, I have seen women actually come out for women, but we also should remember the kind of politics that we play. I remember part of the things that we're looking for in terms of political participation is for more women along the party lines, right? If we're going to do 35% affirmative action, why don't we do it from local government, from ward level, local government level, and party level, right? That is PDP National Working Committee. Why do we have just women leader? And I think there's one deputy auditor. Why don't we affirmative action those spaces? Because no matter how much you want to mobilize, you still have to get through to party, the party numbers. We also have to look at the fact that women do not have the same kind of access to resources for this kind of mobilization. I know we think that, you know, yes, people will vote for very altruistic reasons, but it also boils down to a lot of money, because I've seen a PDP woman leader who actually fought for this kind of, for a certain level of inclusion. And people collected their 150,000 naira each in Anambra. Because again, a lot of the time, these decisions, you know, are boiled down to self-interest.
But to go back to that video that we watched just now, I was talking about those women who were in Ogubolo, right, in River State, who crowded that collation center, trying to protect ballots from armed men. Because a lot of the women on the panel today have mentioned strength in numbers. And my question is, if that kind of thing is replicable, is that kind of thing scalable?
I mean, it is replicable if there is an issue on ground that warrants that kind of emotional investment. The kind of emotional investment is not subject to gender. The kind of emotional investment is the same thing you'll get in Southern Kaduna if we feel that, oh, our identity or something that we hold very dear is being threatened. A lot of the time also, I would ask, you know, I would say that if you're entering an election, you should look for that kind of thing. But we also have to also come back to the point, to the reason why women do not even get to the point where that kind of thing happens. How many of us even get tickets to win the tickets for that to happen? But I would also use the example of Comfort Amway from Southern Kaduna, Sanga local government. She won her election. She's the only legislator from the Northwest, the only female legislator from the Northwest. And she won her election in, you can basically hardly defeat Comfort Amway at the polls. So she's always been winning these elections. And then she won it in 2015 and somebody went to collect it. But she won it again and they tried it. And people would come and fight for this because they felt, a great deal of people who came out, number one, felt, and this seat means a certain thing. And this party or this person winning it represents something like that to us. And if you can key into that, which is really just part of politicking, right? If you can key into those issues, but again, you can also key into those issues and the party system will stop you from getting to the point that Comfort Amway has gotten to. So I was trying to answer the question from that larger, how do you even get to this point where you even pick the ticket or all of that? But a lot of the times you see these things, it's less about Nyesom Wike and more about a larger issue. You could have put a stick there, and if somebody wants to challenge that stick, these people would have come out for that because it means something larger to them.
So it's not something that you can train into women. You have to find a stake that they care about enough to want to do something like that.
Like people need to. I always say that when being part of the strategy team for the last for the opposition party for the last election, you know, during our strategy meetings and all of that, we had these foreign consultants who go like, oh, Nigerians, it's jobs, 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 and all of this. I was like, no, we need emotional extraction. It is that. You can see the Democrats use it in elections. People need to be emotional on their way to the polls. And if you notice that, you know, the ruling party, their own job was to make sure that you were not emotional, that you felt that, you didn't really have a place to lean on. All of these people are the same. It is that thing. They are emotionally invested in an issue. And whoever it is, you would say, I don't really like Biden, but hey, I will. So that is the point I'm answering the question from, because I'm from Southern Kaduna and we stayed under the rain. The person that won, we may not have been sure the person who got the ticket, but that seat meant something. So the conversation for me is still going to be, number one, is that, look, partisan politics means that women have to scale something first. Women have to scale something. I was getting emotional investment from church or from women, or you see them in the market so happy, but will you get the ticket? So I think that these questions they're kind of very different. Women have to first get something to even get to a point where they get some of these things. And we need to address that first, because emotional investment sometimes, some people might not really like Buhari. They may not care about Buhari, but he represents something for them. He's an effigy that represents something, and you'll be surprised that if he tries in 2023, because of that something, they will do it again. So
Cynthia,
it is that.
I wonder what you think.
You said?
I'm talking to Cynthia Mbamalu now. I wonder what she thinks.
Okay. Yeah, no, I totally agree, because one, politics is about emotions, really. The thing is, people vote not because I believe in democracy, like Insa said, but because they feel like at this point I need to make my voice heard because of these things I care about. And just looking at the video, I remember in last elections in Edo last year, there was this polling units, and the people came out to vote and talks came up. came out to disrupt the process, and we saw voters literally chase these thugs away from the polling units. And what did we learn from that? One is the politics around how you manipulate turnout. And I think one thing that we keep, that we're grappling with is the fact that we keep having low voter turnout. But this can work in favor for women, not just campaigning to women voters, but to people, to all voters, because one, women cannot win based on just women voting for them. In fact, the data on registered voters shows that women are just about 47% of registered voters, meaning that we actually have more men registered to vote in Nigeria. And if you go across board, you will have different, if you disaggregate the data at state level, there are different variations. Now, what does this mean? That you need voters to care enough to vote for you. But to do that, so for women who are contesting, one of the things we started doing last year with election data is showing where are the votes coming from, where are the battlegrounds, where are the swing local governments or swing states. Now, who are those not coming out to vote? Those who come out to vote are already bought. Vote buying is real. If you don't have enough money to buy as much votes as the other guys, the old guards that have been in the system, you don't need to go after those people who already are willing to sell their votes. We need to identify those who are not voting, because those are the people who have not been influenced. They've not been corrupted by the rot in the system. Now, that is how we start going after the numbers. We're going after those who need to see a justification to come out to vote and make every campaign as emotional as possible. Now, as humans, every decision we take is influenced and informed by one emotion or the other. Every political decision for men, women, for every individual. Now, most times we always think, oh, it's not emotional, but hey, there's something connecting us to that particular issue. So each time as we plan as women towards the next general elections, we're not just thinking,
all right, we seem to lost the connection to Cynthia, but hopefully we do get her back, because I really liked the points that she was making there, and I want to hear more from her. Let me come to Brianna for a little bit. Brianna, many of the solutions we're talking about today will be driven by civil society. What help does the US government provide for civil society groups in democracy spaces?
Thank you, Sandra, for your question. Yeah, this is one of the key areas that we, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
This is one of the key areas that we work with the Nigerian government is to help foster civil society development and strengthen democratic institutions. I mean, to do this, we meet with government officials to communicate civil society concerns that we hear from organizations and help them better advocate for improved government services or holding officials accountable for transparent management of resources. And our Consul General and Ambassador regularly meet with civil society groups. Actually, just last week, our ambassador was here and met here in Lagos and met with groups, human rights groups and civil society organizations. So our mission is really dedicated to supporting that development in Nigeria, because we see it as a way to bolster the democratic institutions and to hold government accountable. It's a really important and key aspect, I think, of democracy.
Thank you very much. So again, we're talking about numbers, right? I want to stay on that numbers point for a bit more. The more women we have involved in the process, whether it's voting or vote protection or party membership, like Ndi mentioned, the more powerful they are. But that means getting women who are normally not political to get involved. Ndi mentioned that, Zainab mentioned that, Derinsola mentioned that, Honorable Keja mentioned that. Basically, every woman on this panel has mentioned that, Dami inclusive. What's the plan for that? I don't know who's going to go first, but what's the plan for that? Why are so many women at all levels of society not involved politically? How do we get them to become involved politically? Dami, let me hear from you first, and I'll go to Honorable Keje. Then I will come to Kate Henshaw. Dami?
Okay, awesome. So the first question is, why are women currently not as invested in politics?
Yes.
So I think we all know the answer to that is the societal and patriarchal norms. It's really that. I think someone else said it earlier about, oh, was it Derry that was talking about girls being told that they can't go and join this because it's political and it has nothing to do with women. that mindset, even with the educated, is still there. This idea that certain roles are for women. And so it cuts across even other industries, women not knowing that they can fit into this industry, mainly because they've never seen somebody like them, or they've never believed that they can, because it's been seen as a male-dominated industry. I think that's the first thing. But now I feel that that is changing. If we look at 2020, there are so many movements that women, I guess, had a key part in, whether it's the movement against gender-based violence earlier in, I think, April 2020, so many other movements earlier in other years. We can see that women are even more interested in their well-being, but also even in politics. They just don't know how. They don't understand, okay, so I'm interested, what do I do? Beyond, okay, yes, I need to vote. And in Nigeria, it seems like voting is intentionally made difficult, which puts off a lot of people, but they don't know what power they have. They don't know what role they can play beyond voting. And so for me, where, you know, community building with women is a big part of my interest in my work, it's to have the women, like in this panel, educate the women, you know, get them to be more involved. Something that's really inspired me was the Equal Rights Amendment movement in the 70s in America, Gloria Steinem, Bella Abzug, and basically how they were able to start a coalition and a community of women to basically push for this to happen. And a lot of it came from, okay, you start with one woman, you become 10, that woman, all these women have roles to play in terms of education or getting funds or whatever. And then they bring other women and they bring more women, and it becomes this community. So for me, I think that's what I see my role being, you know, building a community of women that are interested in getting the women who already have the know-how to tell us, okay, what can we do? And then learning from each other.
Honorable Keje.
I think that, as she said, there's so many women who are interested in politics. But before I go to that, I'd like to refute something that Cynthia said when she said that when women don't come out to vote, it's an advantage. No, I don't agree. That when there's voter apathy, it's an advantage for women. No, because when there are not that many people at the polling units, they write the results.
No.
Okay.
I said, sorry. I said when there is low voter turnout, it's an advantage
Yes.
to the political parties to manipulate the system.
Oh,
so
okay.
Get voters out.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, because you know I didn't hear you properly. Now, I believe that for us as women, there's so many women who are interested in politics, so many, and as Damilola said, they just don't know how to go about it. And conversations, and there's so many NGOs, there's so many civil society groups, there's so many people who are having conversations about gender participation, and there has been over time. But the truth of the matter is that when we come to have these conversations, we're also not very honest about the problems. And so, you know, we kind of put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. We come up with all these dogmas that are supposed to make it easier, and we downplay the brutality of that political space. And so a lot of women come into the political space very, very optimistic that it is possible to do it on the other end without enough information, and so they get easily disillusioned. Damilola was talking about more engagements, and I think we must start to have more engagements. I listen to Indy Kato all the time on television, and she's very honest. And that's one of the things that really attracts me to her, because it's not about figures, it's not about numbers, it's not about statistics, it's about reality. And I think that until we create a platform that speaks honestly to these issues without the dogmas, until we stop comparing chalk and cheese. For instance, and I always ask this question, every time we talk about getting more women in the political space, how do we get more women elected? I said it earlier on, and I want to restate that a shortcut to more women in political space is for the women organizations, the women groups, to put some pressure on the elected governments to ensure that we have at least 35% appointed positions. Then they will start to strengthen the structures, the systems, and the institutions that come up with the policies that open up the doors for us to start to have the conversations about the legislations that we must have to criminalize the non-inclusion of women at all levels of government. If we don't do that, sorry?
No, go ahead. I was agreeing with you.
Yes, I think that's very important. So I think that having women, I mean, at all elections, over 70% of the voters are women. When I go out to campaign, I talk to the women and the women come out to vote. You can see queues of women snaking around the constituency, and they are the ones who vote. On the morning of elections, we always say, as people who are on the ballot, that the men are going to be busy drinking and the women are going to come out to vote. But it goes beyond the women coming out to vote, because the women always want to deal with the issues that affect the women. We're the ones who have to deal with the infant and maternal mortality. When you're going out to campaign, you're speaking to infrastructure, we'll give you more hospitals, we'll give you more water, we'll create funds. And so women are the ones who are engaged with, and they're the ones who always come out to vote. However, the votes of these women don't count, because you can have a group of women at the polling station and just one gunshot and everybody runs away. I mean, nobody wants to get killed.
How do we solve for the gunshots, Nina?
How do we
solve for the gunshots? How do we solve that?
Well, I mean, you know, it's a tetra-headed problem. Nigeria is a country, proliferation of small arms are like weapons. When I ran my first election in 2007, there were hardly any guns. My last primary elections, it was like it was a war zone. So we have to deal with insecurity in the country. That is part of it. Now the stakes are so much higher. The economy of the country is on the brink. And so a lot of people view political office as the only place where they can actually make some money. So we also have to de-emphasize the attractiveness of political office, because the stakes are so high that people will do almost anything to get into political office. Now, of course, we can have laws that in the next, I think Cynthia is going to speak to that, the laws, the electoral amendment laws. I think they're coming up with laws on electoral violence. We're looking at a commission, an electoral violence commission, and so on and so forth. I don't know if that law is going to get passed. And I don't know if the law is going to get passed. Cynthia, I see you smiling because you understand how it works. Because the people who are supposed to pass the laws are the beneficiaries of the violence, and so nobody's going to want to pass laws that take away the advantage that they have. So it's a tetra-headed problem. But like I said, you know, we'll just peel it off. We'll do what we have to do, put the laws in place. And like the INEC chairman said, it's not the death of laws. It's the fact that us politicians, are very, very amazing at circumventing those laws. And I think that, you know, it has to be an all of society approach to ensuring that the issues that affect the people spoken about, we engage with the people, we engage with the men, he for her, she for he, all those kind of slogans that actually work. We must start to de-emphasize the lucrative nature of public office. We must start to put pressure on the people who are elected. We must start to ensure that certain things like twinning are adhered to. We must start to ensure that the gender policy is adhered to. I mean, there's just so many things out there. We must ensure that there's ratios that they give us. I mean, there's so many conversations, but my problem is not the lack of suggestions, it's the application of saying. And, you know, your guess is as good as mine about if the gender parity index says it's 95 years, I'm not going to bust your bubble. And I don't want to sound like the person who comes into the room with all the negative vibes. But, you know, I think it's doable, but I think we just need to, it just has to be an all of society, different approaches.
Speaking of doable, you won 3 elections, Nena. You are one of the handful of women who have made it to the National Assembly and returned. What did you do right? What were the key differences in your situation that helped you cross the hurdle?
Well, I mean, how long is your program? You know, you know, first of all, I must say, you know, it's first of all, I must say, you know, God must have played a huge part to it.
Because I mean, there was violence, like you said, right?
Oh,
so
there
like
was
there's all of these things. How do you do
so
it?
what do you, well, you know, I'm not gonna tell you everything on national television or whatever.
Well, we're being
but I'm gonna
honest.
tell
You did mention we're being honest.
I am being honest, but let me tell you something. The truth of the matter is that over time, elections have gotten more and more violent. In 2007, I blindsided them, and you know, for me, it's a very interesting story because luckily for me, I had the opportunity, I had access to some kind of financing, and you know, it was something that I had access to. Now, there are a lot of women who don't. So what did I do right? When I first came in to run in the elections, everybody thought I was a joke. I was a double minority. I was young and I was a woman. And so for a lot of people, they didn't even take me seriously. And so I'm going to tell you a very short story. So I had a conversation with a family friend who happened to be a member of the National ESCO. And I said to him, this is what I wanted to do. And he said to me, you know, if you can go through the primary elections, I will support you. And that goes back to the support base of all the men in your family. Okay. Now I went through, I talked to the people, I engaged with the people, and then they decided to take a chance at me. On the day of the elections, there was some violence, but it's also very important to note, it's also very important to note that when
Okay, so we're going to give you a minute there and then come back to you. But I did mention, are you okay? Are you good to go now?
Yes, I am.
All right, go ahead.
You know, and so we did all kinds of things. We had the police, we had to go to the police, we had to have the people in the constituency create a wedge around me. They created a wedge around me that made it difficult for me to be attacked by the people. It does help that there has never been a woman in public office in my constituency, and the people were willing to give me a chance. Okay, now on the day of the elections, it was very, very violent, but I was removed. But my support family base, the men in my family, were there and they protected me from that. And that's very important, that for you to run in an election in the Nigerian space, you must have a strong male base. Without that strong male base, it's almost impossible to do it. Were there women at the polling units? Absolutely. But when it came to dealing with the men and the violence, I needed the men to deal with it, and they dealt with it. And I've used that that means in my 3 elections, and they have always worked.
All right then. Now, people often say things like, Derinsola, I'm coming to you with this question. People often say things like, work your way up, start from the bottom. And this is also a question that Zainab can throw insight into, because she did start from the bottom. But there are still obstacles there, right? You've got party godfathers who dictate who runs for local and state seats. And I have to ask, and I'm hoping that this is even a realistic question, is there a way to break the stranglehold at the grassroots? I'm going to start with Derinsola, then I'll come back to Zainab, who actually won a council election in the FCT. Derinsola?
When you say break the stranglehold at the grassroots, do you mean break the Godfather stranglehold at the grassroots?
Yes. Is it possible?
Okay,
I did say I didn't know it was a realistic question.
I'm also going to be very pragmatic about this. Now, the issue of godfatherism is one that I believe we don't discuss in enough depth. Basically, he who pays the piper dictates the tune. So if you have one person that has built a structure over decades, they've funded that structure for a long time. Pretty much everybody in that structure is in whatever position they're in because of them. I think it goes without saying that they own that structure. And I think that's how godfathers emerge. People don't just wake up and become godfathers or declare themselves godfathers. It's influence that they've built over a lot of time. Now, there's one thing we've been telling ourselves and one thing we've been working at. I've also been working at this also. As I said earlier, he who pays the piper dictates the tune. If you're a member of a political party, there are obligations that you're actually supposed to meet, paying your dues, for instance, and other such issues. And at the same time, there's power in numbers. I think this is a point that has been reiterated several times through the course of this discussion. And if you have enough young people, say in a particular ward or in a particular local government, you're from a local government that decides the vote, and perhaps you're not satisfied with the kind of candidates that have emerged from your local government, and then you mobilize a lot of young people or a lot of young women or a lot of women or a lot of people generally to join the party in that local government. If you have strong enough numbers, you can influence who emerges as a candidate in that local government. So when we talk about building influence and taking over structures and being able to influence decisions of the party, that's why you find a lot of young people saying, join a political party. It's because if we don't have the numbers, we cannot attain a critical mass, and then we cannot build enough influence within political structures to be able to actually influence the decision of who gets to emerge and who gets to occupy what. As I said earlier during previous contributions, the decision of who emerges a candidate is the most important thing in the political process, not even who you vote for at the end of the day, because that process is who determines the options that the electorate will have. So we need to be able to get into political party structures in large enough numbers to be able to do anything. Now, again, being very pragmatic, even if you do have the numbers, you need consensus building, you need to consult. So I mentioned the issue of stakeholder mapping earlier. That's something that you have to do irrespective of how well you've mobilized or irrespective of who controls the structure. And then in a lot of states, in a lot of places, you find that there might be one leader, but usually how it happens is that one leader also has like people who influence him, because it's usually a man. So if you're able to state your case before one of those people, they might be able to get in for you. Now, in politics, as with every other career field, because people will tell you this from academia to banking to even teaching, you need people who can speak for you in rooms that you cannot gain access to. So having mentors, having leaders, having people who support you. I'm going to come back to this, can't we form a political party. Having mentors, having leaders, having people who support you is very key. But I think the problem with godfatherism begins when people begin to subvert processes. There's nothing wrong with mentorship. There's nothing wrong with favoring a candidate. Say you're a governor, you believe there is one aspirant who has the needed capacity to succeed you and consolidate on your achievements. There's nothing wrong with supporting someone. But when we begin to subvert processes such that democratic principles are thrown out the window, that's what I personally take exception to. But then if you look at how parties are built, if you look at the lukewarm attitude, when you talk to young people, the apathy, the reluctance to actually get involved, you can understand why it continues to happen. You can understand why the political system remains the way it is. And can we do away with godfatherism? Honestly, I don't think so. And then I mentioned something earlier about the issue of funding. A lot of candidates who emerge aren't necessarily spending their own money. And yes, a godfather who is not godfathering you with funds is no godfather at all. So exactly. So that's also something to consider. And it's fine. I raised the issue of campaign funding, financing, crowdfunding earlier. A lot of candidates need support. So honestly, the political system, as imperfect as it is, it actually also does make sense when you if you understand what goes on, you tend to have a clearer understanding of why things are the way they are. So I think the key advice that I would give to young people and to women and to young women is just, we have to join parties in very large numbers to be able to influence what goes on within them. And in as much as we might be averse to certain things, we also learn, we also need to learn how to build consensus and how to consult and how to relate with people who do not necessarily share the same vision and the same ideas that we do. Because politics at the end of the day is about managing people.
I like that. Zainab.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
Okay, about how I got in the political, if you can repeat the question again.
The same question I asked Derinsola, is there a way to break the stranglehold at the grassroots? You know, I'm asking you because you actually won a council election in the FCT, and people are always talking about work your way up, start from the bottom. And we've talked about all the obstacles at the bottom. We've talked about party godfathers who often dictate who gets to run for local or state seats. So is there a way to break the stranglehold at the grassroots? Or is Derinsola right when she says,
Well, it depends on where you're coming from. For example, I went into politics, you know, a novice. I just went in like that. And, you know, my dad just dared me and I just went into the world. I didn't know. So I learned the hard way.
Your dad dared
you.
I like that.
Yeah, he dared me. And I just stood up and I just got a form. And how I got the form was wrong because I was supposed to get the form from the ward. So I went to the national level and that was my first sin, you know, in politics. So it was like Honorable Nana said, she had the double minority, whatever against her. I had quadruple. I was a Muslim, I was a woman, I was very educated, and I was from the north as well. So, but what gave me strength was I didn't see myself as a woman when I went into politics. I forgot because, you know, I had a lot of men around me and they saw in me what, you know, they believed in me because, you know, of what I had. So I didn't really have much of godfatherism, but I had like lions behind me. So it was easier for me. Do you understand? People wanted to intimidate me. They tried, but when they saw the name attached to me and who were behind, who the people that were just at my back, not because they were supporting me or they were pushing me. No, I did it on my own. I just woke up and I just decided to go into the world like that. But in some other spaces, it's different. For example, in the South, you have to have godfathers. There are some few places where you don't really have to have godfathers, but you need to have some names behind you, which maybe you can interpret as godfathers. And one thing that stood out for me was I started from the bottom, but they were surprised. How can somebody, normally you find local people, you know, people that are not that educated, maybe secondary school, you know, leavers that, you know, that just, you know, venture into local politics and it stays local and there's no progress, there's no initiative, no creativity, nothing. So what I did was I had 7 degrees, I put it on my poster, you know? And they were like, oh, okay, she's educated and she's coming to the bottom, you know, and stuff like that. And people I didn't know supported me. They gave me a lot of money, you know, and stuff like that. So there is a lot, you have to know your strength do a SWOT analysis on yourself. You have to know your strength and use that to your advantage, you know, especially in places where you don't have godfathers. Well, if you do have godfathers, then you have to identify, you know, you have to consult, you have to do that. I did some consulting as well. There were a few stakeholders that I really needed to meet, you know, and stuff, just for their blessings and for them to make, because if not, they will frustrate you. They will send their boys after you. This is the reality, you know, and I just came back from England, you know, speaking with the, you know, and obviously they dealt with me. Yeah, at some point I just lost my, you know, the phone. I just lost it, and you know, I was like, you know, I became Agbero. You know, so there are a lot of things that you really need to, you know, identify. You know, it's a cultural problem. You know, and politics has its own culture, and you really need to learn the ropes. So if you do not know
the culture,
if you do not know, you know, what it entails, you know, you might, you know, learn the hard way. And I did learn the hard way, and it's a beautiful experience, but frustrating.
I do have to ask Dami. I'll come to Dami, then Kate Henshaw, because they're both, even though Kate Henshaw ran for office and also was a special advisor to her state governor, she's still more or less an outsider, kind of like Dami. Dami is more of an outsider than everybody else on this panel, but Kate can relate a little bit. Now, you cannot separate politics and elections from money all over the world. It's not a Nigerian problem. In Nigeria, it's a bit more ridiculous, but you know, politics and money, the same thing all over the world. Everybody on this panel has mentioned that. Fundraising is a big part of winning elections anywhere at all in the world, whether it is funding a structure or getting your message out or any other number of things. And you said that, Dami, that's why I'm coming to you with this question. And you have women in Nigeria with less economic power than men. Nena mentioned that COVID-19 has decimated that power even more. But even the money that Nigerian women do have isn't going into politics as much as men's money. How do we change that? How do we get more professional women such as yourself in the tech world, the bankers, the women who are in WIMBIs, for instance? How do we get business women, professional women to put money into women-centered politics? How do we do that?
So someone actually brought this up earlier. One of the things from a tech perspective, one thing that we can do, because someone mentioned safety, was, okay, doing things online. I know we're a long way away from there and from having elections online in Nigeria, but I actually like that suggestion. Let's think about what we can do to keep women safe. In terms of, you know, COVID-19 and contributions and the impact on women's income, I think it's about everyone doing what they can where they are. So let's say that we had 1 million women in Nigeria contributing 1,000 naira to a party that they believed in. I don't know, my math right now is not really great, but I guess that's what, 10 million naira roughly, or over 100 million? That's an example. And then obviously people who are educated, who have more power, more disposable income, giving what they can, even if it's 50,000 naira a month, because we've seen it online. So for example, Nigerian women and feminists online are always raising money for causes. In a minute, you know, we hear this lady has this problem, this woman has been abused, how can we support her? Women would have raised 5 million naira in like a minute, right? So when we care, when we are emotionally invested, as I think Cynthia said, well, we will definitely put our money where our mouths are. So I think that's a lot of that is for me what I think we need to do. So women contributing what they can. If it's 1,000 naira and 1 million women are doing that, that's a lot of money. If it's 5,000, if it's 50,000 that you can afford a month, and we all start pulling it together and supporting candidates that we believe in, I think that could be the impact.
Kate Henshaw. Do we still have Kate here? Oh, Kate isn't here anymore. All right, let me come to Cynthia with that question. Because Cynthia is also, even though she's in the civil society space, in fact, you're an establishment babe. Let me not lie, but let me ask you the question, Cynthia. Is Cynthia there? Yes, she is. I can see her. Okay, so Cynthia,
Yeah, did you just say I'm establishment based?
No, you're establishment babe. You're part of the politicians.
No. But yeah, I mean, I guess, I think the question is on money, right?
Yes.
Fundraising.
How do we change the part where women are not funding politics? Why are women not putting their money there? How do we get more professional women, more business women to put money into women-centered politics?
Well, I think one, it's not really been a culture for top women in the private sector to think about investing in politics like the men do, and I think it's just about the socialization for a lot of women. We've growing up, we've never really connected the fact that economic power, political power, they're all interconnected. That there's a reason some men are as powerful and rich as they are in Nigeria, because they inform politics, or rather they fund politics. They influence policies, and as long as their guys are in office, policies that come out support their economic plans and strategies. So we need to start getting a lot of women in the private sector to understand that hey, if your people are winning, there's more likelihood for policies that would evolve at different levels to actually support or influence that venture you are particularly invested in. So that's one. The other thing is also you need to look at the gender gap when it comes to economic power. And I think that is actually one that is just, we have a few women who are at that top, at that level, to that have that level of funding and financing to go and support politics. The way we have a lot more men rather. So we have fewer women, but more women are emerging, and we're learning how to fundraise and put resources together. So I think because for a long period of time we had more men who had access to that level of resources to fund politics. That is why we had men leading in that field. But as more women are becoming economically empowered, and as more women are becoming big merchants, and in Africa, within the continent, within Nigeria, even at state levels, I think we'll start seeing more women fund and support politics. So that's one angle. So closing the gender gap on economic empowerment actually helps women emergence in politics. The other part is when it comes to politics, fundraising. I mean, different things work in different societies. Nigeria, we're yet to get to the point where people say, I want to contribute 1,000 naira to support this woman or this candidate. We're not yet our political culture hasn't evolved to that stage. So, so one of the things we want politicians to give us. In fact, the moment you declare, I want to contest for office, the demands that will start hitting your table will just increase. People don't even think, I should support you money, I should support you with this. They're already asking, what would you give to me? And so that's a challenge that we have, that our political culture has not yet evolved to the point that we start seeing funding and contributing to finance and financially contributing to support candidacy as a major role of our civic responsibility in a democracy. We haven't gotten to that level, but it's a gradual process. Why do I say that? NSAS taught us that we can fundraise and you put together resources to push for an agenda that we care about. And I think that lies with the younger generation, because as generations grow, we are becoming exposed to what can be possible within our system, how we can pull resources together to support someone we care about. And I think there's a lot that we need to do to start building that consciousness amongst the younger generation, who are already seeing that we can actually support this woman or this lady, and she can represent us in office, and we can hold her accountable. So that's the other thing. So learning new ways to fundraise, leveraging on what we've learned from NSAS and building upon that. The other part for me is, I wanted to touch this point because Honorable Nena mentioned something about the electoral reforms. And honestly, these guys in power, and when I'm saying guys, because they are mainly men in national
power,
assembly.
Guys
in power do not want to reform a system that would put them at a disadvantage, because they are benefiting from the flaws in the system. So one recommendation for instance, recommendation to regulate candidate nomination. We had proposals to put a limitation on how much parties can charge, so that more people, our argument is more women, more young persons can actually purchase nomination, so that you can even contest in primary. Because if you cannot even buy the ticket, how will you contest?
You can't contest, exactly.
But for some reason, this particular proposal has been so controversial and so contentious that it didn't even make it. So proposals on regulating costs, proposals on even regulating campaign financing, on even the Electoral Commission's offenses bill. So proposals that we believe are progressive, that if you get it in, you open up the space. are the most contentious and most controversial. And you literally have to start having campaigns around that. Proposals for women inclusion at the party primaries level. So there were proposals to have certain percentages of women as delegates in party primary, because the electoral regulates primaries. Now, those proposals did not even make it. I remember we wrote a letter and one lawmaker actually called me and admonished me, literally warning me that I'm thinking Women Inclusion in Electoral Act. Like he felt the letter was like an African. I didn't even understand it. I was stepping, honorable, we didn't mean to insult you. This is why we are making these proposals. So you see, even the proposals that we believe are progressive, that would open up the space, these guys would fight against it because they are already thinking about their interest. If we open it up, it kicks us out. And I'll connect this to the money part. Now, why is money important? Because if you can't afford to get a nation to contest in some of these parties with national prominence. I'm not saying that the newer parties are not cheaper, because yes, there are newer parties that you can easily afford to buy nomination, but by buying the nomination, you need to build the party's popularity. You need to literally carry the party on your back. We have young people who run in the newer parties. The parties did not have structures to support their candidacy. So at the end, they were spending a lot more to run their campaigns because you have to introduce your party, introduce yourself, introduce why you want to run. So you're doing double layers of introduction. Unlike when you're running on a very popular party. So when people say, why regulate costs? You say, we want to regulate costs across board so that if you want to contest, you can contest within a bigger party, within a newer party, and you have the equal opportunity to run for office. Because at the end, money controls a lot of decisions that happens within the political space. And if we don't have people, if we don't regulate the costs, we would keep closing up the space for participation. And that is the advocacy for we need to regulate nomination, we need to regulate costs, we need to regulate party primary processes and influence how delegates emerge, sort of having law regulate how party delegates emerge. And I think lastly, for me, on just the funding, I like what Electa is doing. I believe that we may not have 50-50 now. Like Honorable Nena said, the report said it to take the world 99.9 years.
95 years. Please don't add 4 years.
95.
99. 95. It's 95.
Go and read it. Almost 100 years. Go and read it. It said almost 100 years, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. Read it again. Now, meaning that I'm not saying we can't, like gender part is a gradual process. So for me, the next election, the target is who are those groups who are already supporting who are already leading on fundraising for women, Electa, and so many other groups. There are different groups doing that already. Where are the small pockets of funds that women can tap into? And for donors, I think for donors, most times they focus on capacity building. We have a lot of women with the capacity to run. So it's not necessarily about workshops or capacity building. Honestly, we need to start thinking of practical ways to support women. And if you say you want to take over the cost of media and communications for women, that is a huge cost you're taking out. If you say you want to take over, we're going to pay a printer to produce flyers for this percentage of women who will contest elections if they meet this certain criteria. Now, that is practical, and women who meet those criteria can access that opportunity to have their printers, their flyers and campaign materials printed at no cost or at subsidized rate. So we also need, like when donors come this and say, what do you think women need? I'm like, I don't want workshops. They don't want conferences. Like a lot of conferences and workshops have been happening. We've built capacities already. The challenge is the system is lethal, and to compete in this system is strong enough to use power to compete against power. And the best way to do that is to have that financial strength, to have that support structure, and to have access to the opportunities that would help you emerge as a candidate. Legal reform, yes, is good, but it's a process. There's no guarantee that Electoral Act will be passed immediately. We believe it should be passed by June this year. They keep moving the date from March, now is June. We're hopeful that June is to be passed. But as we're holding on to that, we're also saying beyond legal reform, yes, legal reform is one angle. This is a multi-pronged thing. Can we also start supporting women who want to run? Practically, not just capacity. Not that I don't have a problem with capacity building workshops. They are good.
But we've built enough. We've done enough.
Beyond that, can we start looking for ways to support women to emerge? And also, as the parties register members, can we get more women to register within the political parties? And I think lastly for me, registered voters. we need more women to register as voters. We need to get younger people. I feel like younger people have the tendency
more radical.
Yeah, we need to get all our Sorosoke generation to register. Once INEC commences that particular process this time around, let's get our numbers up, because those are the people that would be easily convinced to support women candidates.
I finally, as we wrap up tonight, ladies, you have been fantastic. Everyone who's been in the comments, who's been asking questions. Unfortunately, we cannot take your questions because we only have what 2 hours, 30 minutes, 3 hours. There's not a lot you can pack into that. But I do feel like we need to have this conversation again. But I have to ask Nenna, who has women friends who have money. You know, why are your first of all, are your women friends contributing, donating, funding politics? The women you know that have money, that is. If they are, great. If they're not, do you know why they're not?
I think you've asked this question before, and I must say that, you know, there's something we say in politics. Now, a lot of the people who have money are business people. And, you know, the one thing that politics does is that it throws away everything you learned in business school. In politics, there's a saying that politics money not get receipts, which means that, you know, it doesn't matter how much you put into it, you just don't get out of it, especially if the person loses an election. And so a lot of people would invest, not in the experiment of politics, but they invest in a winning candidate. Okay, so when they come out and they put their money into it and you lose the elections, now what do you say to the people? Unless we clear all the backlog of all the problems, the myriad of problems that confronts women, people who are outside of the political space are not very quick to invest their money in a horse that may not reach the finish line. And I think that is part of the problem, right? So if indeed, yes, there are women. I know WIMBIZ is doing amazing work. I've attended quite a few platforms where WIMBIZ has created WIMPOL, and it's just about creating opportunities and information about women who are in boardrooms, who are thinking about transiting to politics. Because I believe that they recognize the fact that we need more women in conflict resolution, in policy making, for the work that they do at the boardrooms to actually gain the traction that they require. And so they're doing a lot of that. But the truth of the matter is that when it comes down, especially when you look at, and I make the point again, post-COVID, Nigeria has lost a lot of money. People have lost a lot of money. The GDP is minus 6.1%. Women in business have not made that much money. So I know that unless the politics of the post-COVID era is even going to presents a much smaller space with women with money. Now, do they do things? Of course, they create the odd fundraisers for their colleagues. They'll give you make t-shirts or posters. But while that is very generous, it doesn't even begin to scratch the surface as far as elections are concerned. For vote buying, as Cynthia pointed out, sometimes it's 5,000 naira per vote. That's a lot of money in huge constituencies. And you know, looking at it from the business point of view, I don't know that many people who are going to throw their money after a project that may come out belly up. So that may probably be part of the reason. But I know that, and again, I must buttress the point that Cynthia made, that, you know, we have so many development partners who are partnering women on gender. But the truth of the matter is that I find two problems. One, that the people who draw the policies are too far removed from the women, and what it is that they give us in terms of tangibles doesn't really help the electioneering process. I know that I've attended so many of these meetings and so many of these, and you hear humongous amounts of money that have been brought to Nigeria for in the gender agenda, to help the gender agenda. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you find that the women who are on the fields trying to run in elections have absolutely no way to access these funds. And when it is time for real women who are at the ballots to engage and find out, there's just nobody in the space. So I think that there needs to be another way to engage with women who are honestly interested in running in elections in a way that creates tangible effects on the women who are actually running over and beyond the echo, and unfortunately in some cases no commitments. So I hope that moving forward there's more commitments.
All right. Honorable Nenna Elendu Ukeje there. I have to say thank you, of course, to everybody who has been a part of this. Thank you to everybody who stayed with us from the beginning. Thank you all for joining us today. In the coming days, GlassCon will be reaching out to you with summaries of what we discussed here today. The goal is to help you keep the conversation going and to put the action plans in front of you to apply in the real world. So let's see how much we can do in the next year. Once again, a big thank you to our partners, the Canadian and UK High Commissions, the US Consulate General, OSIWA, the Open Society Initiative for West Africa, Pulse, our media partner, Cool FM, Wazobia FM, Wazobia TV, our media partners as well. A big thank you to Ufot, who stayed throughout this meeting. I'm hoping that she has learned quite a bit about the Nigerian process, some of the similarities with the American process and the key differences as well. And to all our panelists, thank you so much. Remember, of course, to listen to The Glass Ceiling every Wednesday at 4 p.m. on Nigeria Info 99.3 Lagos. You can listen online as well, www.nigeriainfo.fm. And listen to Hard Facts, my drive time show, every weekday from 3 p.m. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. That was the Glass Ceiling Convention 2021 World. Good night.